Oh, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna hit record.
Sure, I'm gonna, yeah.
Okay.
So does everyone here know what we're in store for tonight?
I got my coffee.
I mean, it might not be like cannabis task force long, but it was long.
And there's a statutory requirement that we comment on all of these, or not Pier 76, but the first two.
What do you mean is that? Well, I mean, we're gonna
Like
comment.
we're time limited for them.
Correct, but we're gonna send our comments to land use.
Yes, that makes sense, totally true.
So if we don't get through it all, or if we forget something, we can always, supplement at every meeting.
We have a long meeting and we should probably start, correct?
Yes, it just turned 6:30, Marty.
Yeah. So we'll wait 2 minutes.
Oh, we will?
Yeah.
We can,
I
well,
mean, you said it
quorum.
just turned 6:30 as though you were waiting for somebody.
No, we have quorum, so we're good.
Updates while you're waiting.
There are two low-key updates for the room if you wanna hear them.
Yeah, first let's do the preamble first.
Go for
And Marty,
And the preamble is as follows. Welcome to the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee that Leslie and I chair. I'm sorry that I continue to have to do this virtually. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet both in person and virtually. All community board committee meetings will require an in-person quorum to come to order and conduct business. We've just counted that. Members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or extraordinary circumstance. Excused committee members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Committee members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. We encourage members of the public to join virtually, and the hybrid policy can be found on the website. And we're being recorded, as we always are. We have a long agenda. We've switched the first items of the agenda so that Nadine and company can get out of there if they want to. But they can stay for the whole meeting too. They're welcome. We're going to do the committee discussion on Pier 76. Then we'll talk about NYCHA and then the bus terminal. And all of them have too much meat on them. So everybody who wants to speak, you should say as much as you want, but you should say it quickly and let the next person speak.
Thank you, Marty. So we do have Maureen and Robert here live in person from Hunter Park Trust. And before they get into our first agenda item, which is, I do want to mention, so on our agenda that went out to the public, if anyone is listening in the public or on YouTube, that Pier 76 is our second agenda item. So I'm sure no one here minds if we switch it to the first, just because they're here in person and to respect their time. But I do want to say, if there's anyone in the public that comes later expecting this to be the second item, that we will allow them to speak on it, and we will give them that leeway, just so no one feels that they're left out. I hope everyone's okay with that. Okay, great. So before we get into the meat and potatoes,
I'll give you two quick upfront feel-good moments. Last week, we opened our science playground at Pier 26. This is our sturgeon playground, 2 larger-than-life sturgeons, mostly atomically correct, and you can find a new one. It serves ages 3 through 12, including a challenging slide. Haven't tried it, but I'll tell you, it's a little challenging. And if so folks want to make your way down there to the closer crossing that knows more, it's really a fabulous, we had some local 2 third-grade classes kind of be the first users, and really opening the gates and allowing a bunch of screaming children to run onto a playground for the first time. Reminds you all why we work in parks. My second very quick update is that upcoming between February 17th to February 24th, it is Kids Week at the Intrepid. The Kids Week is one of our annual events. They have STEAM, that's science, technology, arts, engineering, arts, fun-filled activities, live demo shows, hands-on workshops, performances, special guests, There are planetarium shows, demonstrations from NASA. There's a whole lot on this, and I'm not gonna go through it all. You should go check out either our website or their website, learn more if you guys are interested. Those are my first two updates, and we'll real quick.
Thank you.
That's over anyway, just to be clear.
So, do you wanna say anything before we, or go into our,
Is this, would you prefer that I go there?
the Waterfront, it worked well last year,
Okay, yes.
right?
Yeah, so, hi, and thank you for putting us first, but also just for entertaining us back here again. I think every one of you was here last time, and Marty, obviously, but if there, so I'm not gonna repeat what we did the last time, but for anyone who's listening remotely, we came to you after conducting a task force process to think about the future of Pier 76. During which we explored ideas for having Pier 76 someday be both incredible public open space on a fully rebuilt pier that can support the public open space use, as well as a true revenue generating use that helps support the balance of Hudson River Park, our ongoing care and maintenance. And as you know, or have heard from us the last time, our Hudson River Park Act is what governs what we can and can't do at various piers. And we came to you and to the task force to explore ideas that might give us more flexibility in the future, whenever the climate is right. And we've worked on all the precedent conditions with you and city planning and everybody else like that to think about opening the envelope to potential uses that could happen to generate revenue at Pier 40. And we gave you and the task force 3 documents that we prepared. One is the summary of need. And that's the brief document that essentially just describes more or less the pier condition, the fact that it's going to need to be rebuilt because of the marine borers that are eating away at the piles, the general order of magnitude cost of that. I think that's in here about $120 million in 2023 dollars. So ever more the longer it takes to do this. That's the summary of need, and I don't think that's very controversial. But if anyone has questions on that, we can answer them. The second one was a matrix of types of uses where we tried to array what we heard from the task force and our really terrific consultants, the landscape architecture firm and the economic consultants, looking at the opportunities and constraints or downsides of the various types of revenue generating uses that could be here. It's not ordered in priority, but we just tried to neutrally put out there considerations as we think about the potential future uses. And then the third document was the one that we call the Statement of Principles for Future Planning at Pier 76. Regardless of the future use, even if it was something that was allowed under the Hudson River Park Act today, we would need to be thinking about the principles for future use because, that's what happens when you don't stand and plan about it. Whatever we do, we know that things like driveways, drop-offs, lights on the water, noisy things, all of those other things are things that people are gonna have opinions about. We operate other portions of the park, and we know that the ability to have a successful project like Pier 57 means taking all the things we've learned from all our community engagement and engagement with developers and engagement with landscape firms over the 20 years that we've been building the park, and trying to synthesize them and be smart about trying to achieve a balance between revenue and our desire, ours as well, to have really fantastic park spaces. So none of this, just as a reminder, the task force did not write any of these documents. They didn't vote on any of these documents. This was Hudson River Park Trust at the end of a really constructive process, trying to summarize what we thought we heard people say. We made a few modest refinements to it based on the discussion that came out afterwards. And we think this is a pretty fair summary of things that we will have to keep working on once we do a competitive procurement and everything else, once we have whatever Hudson River Park Act changes we can secure. And then the last thing was that we had discussed the idea of possibly changing the selling rights district area for our development rights from the commercial piers potentially another block hypothetically within CB4. Would presumably within a subset of the community board 4 area that you would decide on, not us. To increase the odds of perhaps getting revenue to support that upfront initial 120, $150 million need to rebuild the pier. But I think the focus of tonight really is to think about, essentially, to put it bluntly, are there any uses in this matrix that need to be off the table? Or are there any considerations in the statement of principles that we sort of didn't capture that you think community board 4 believes we should know, or that elected should know, or whatever, in order to advance this? So in a nutshell, I think that's sort of what we challenged you with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate it. The overview. So, I don't know if everyone got a chance. We sent out an email. Maybe it was like a week or two ago about our objective for this portion of the meeting, the Pier 76. It's going to be very, very, tempting to say, I would love this, and I would love this, and this is what we should do, and, you know, I want a roller coaster or whatever. It'll be very tempting to do that. But what we're just gonna, for this portion, this part of our, in the process, the first part, is we're gonna take a step back. And we are going to refer to the two things, the two documents that Maureen just said, the matrix and also the draft statement of principles. That I hope everyone at least got a chance to look over a little bit. Because what, as Maureen said, is happening, the status now is you can't really do anything on that pier according to the act, right? They can't, there's no really revenue generating possibilities that they can go into right now. So there has to be a change in the act. And as we said, we would like to hopefully do that sooner rather than later. And if that is the case, we would like to come out of a letter today that gives some sort of allowances or signals what we would be okay with and what we wouldn't be okay with Hudson River Park Trust and our local elected officials to explore. So that once we could do that, or once we decide that, we can hand it over to our state elected officials for the most part. And Hudson River Park Trust. And then they can kind of put those mechanisms into place on how to change it up in Albany and wherever else it needs to be changed according to the act, just to give the allowances to really explore. There might be, we might say, hey, listen, we definitely do not want a hotel, and everyone will be like, don't even explore that. I mean, that could be, it could be. But, you know, we're thinking a little broader than narrower in this meeting, because those chances for those details will definitely come, right? We're gonna have many, many meetings. So if we say we want an office building now, it doesn't mean we're gonna have a 16-story office building. There's still definitely the meetings that we're gonna go through to narrow the channels of what is possible and what isn't possible. It's just a very broad change in the act. I shouldn't say a broad change in the act, but it's maybe a specific change in the act, I should say, but a broad conversation. Okay, so I don't know if anyone wants to start off with any initial thoughts they have. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so I do have, so I did read this, I did not bring my notes. But under the statement of principles, there is a section that says some uses that should not occur at Pier 76. Is that already in stone? So we don't even have to address that, because there's not gonna be a casino, there's not gonna be a parking garage. These things are already established.
So casinos are already prohibited in a park. Housing is already prohibited. Parking garages are very limited already. You could, for example, say you want your legislation to make sure there's no big public parking garage there. But that's it. So that's what you're asking.
So I think, so the task force decided that these would be, we could say, no, we really do want housing. But but when they talk to us, it just wouldn't be feasible. It wouldn't.
No,
it
I'm
wouldn't-
fine with it.
So,
I just want
yeah.
to make sure we didn't have to go off at this.
I don't think anything
Yeah.
necessarily is off the table, but they kind of teased it out for us
Okay.
initially, and then it's kind of focused for us. Does that make sense?
I mean,
Yeah.
we could be saying about that, we absolutely agree with that list. Is that what you're saying, Sally?
Yes, I do. I agree with that list, and I wanted to make sure it was established and already taken care of.
Sure, Matt?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna sort of support what Sally says about looking at some of the uses that we feel wouldn't be appropriate for the pier. And I think, you know, I also agree. I think that these are uses that I don't think would necessarily be feasible, like housing, but some of the things like casinos and parking garages there are conflict with things that we as a community just don't like to see in our public spaces, so I was thinking, is there a way to, because this isn't like set in stone necessarily, right? There's sort of like guiding principles.
No, it's
Should
not
we-
set in stone.
But should we as a committee, if we're comfortable with these, and maybe other people have other uses that should be added to this list, but should we as a committee like formalize and adopt sort of this guiding principles? Like we generally support the guiding principles outlined in this document. And certainly we can have a conversation about other things, but I feel like such a tremendous amount of work went into this already. It really helps set sort of the groundwork for a larger discussion later on about uses, but this seems to be, and I'm comfortable with what's outlined in this particular document.
Well, you were on the task force.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I mentioned that, yeah.
I know.
I mentioned that at the last meeting, but yeah, and Roberta and I were both on the task force, so we spent 4 months on this. But I think it is important to have the conversation as a committee to think about if there are uses that we didn't consider. But just from the perspective of going through this, it was a really robust conversation and a lot of thought went into it. And just to help us, like, sort of give some framework to
So
it, do
just-
we sort of adopt this as like a?
So
guiding
what I'm envisioning is, well, I think would have to happen, I guess, if we want to move forward, is that there will be a letter coming out today of, like what we said, the broader, what we like, what we think could be explored with changes in the act. That will go to Tony Simone, it'll go to Brett Hoylman, it'll go to our trust. In that letter, we can also obviously say, if you guys want, as far as the statement of principles, this is what we agree with, this is what we don't, that will be
Yeah,
incorporated in the
right.
thing letter.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, well,
Did Matt
Well,
have didn't Matt have an item that he wanted to add to the list of 4?
No, I don't. I'm good with the list here. Certainly it's up for conversation as a committee, but I just kind of wanted to say, maybe we include to Leslie, we include that in a letter that we support the guiding principles. We should include that in the letter.
I agree, yeah.
Yep.
While we're talking about what shouldn't happen, there is a statement in the principles that Pier 76 cannot and should not be used to fill the park's full projected financial gap. And I think that needs to be included in the letter as well.
Agree.
Would you say that again? What is it that should be included?
But we're not putting the bill for everything.
So Marty, it's on the second page,
Yeah.
second paragraph. And it says, Pier 76 alone cannot and should not be used to fill the park's full projected financial gap.
That makes sense. And that should be included what we don't want. Or we do want this pier to support itself, not the whole park.
highlighted that in the statement of,
Yeah.
Well, Marty, it's to support more than just the pier itself, but it can't cover the entire whole in the parks, with their capital maintenance budget.
Yeah, that's what the paragraph says. I subscribe to
I
that.
think we should reiterate that in our letter.
just so if anyone doesn't know, we do have an expert in the park with Lowell, since he was on the board for so long and knows this particular topic inside and out. Raul, you have that?
Yes, I'm wondering, in the statement of principle where it talks about the monies, public or private, why there was no discussion about, I know it has to go to Albany, most everything has to go to Albany for approval, but why there was no talk about being able to issue municipal bonds or borrow money in the public markets? Why is that?
So Hudson River Park Trust is currently prohibited from bonding.
It's prohibited from doing a lot of things. We're gonna have to go to Albany anyway.
The state and city are obviously allowed to bond, and so when we get public money from them to construct things, that's probably most likely to have been money that was bonded. So they, the reason you have a Pier 84 or a Chelsea Waterside Park in large measure is because the state and city gave us upfront construction money. In this case, because the pier is so very large, it's sure, we could all hope that only state or city or maybe federal money comes to us. We just are worried that maybe that would be a long time waiting, so that's where we are saying maybe the development rights or something else would be useful too. We did not spend a lot of time with the task force discussing bonding. I would say that we are going beyond what was discussed with the task force, if that is coming up right now. And you all should know that. You can have your own opinion on that, but I wouldn't want to say that that's been fairly discussed with people yet.
Is the trust eligible for New York State infrastructure funding? That is obviously bonded, but nonprofit infrastructure?
Yeah, we believe we would be, if we fit the right category. So
Depends on use.
depends on use, but it's also a little bit like, so the Environmental Bond Act has some 6 specific categories. We are maybe a fit for a bit of it, but not maybe the perfect fit for some of it. Infrastructure money sort of has to have a project ready to go in some cases, which we're clearly not here because we don't know what we're building yet. So, but we've taken historically any of those chances that we get and tried, yeah.
Jennifer?
So as we start to talk about the use, I had a question about the air rights that it mentions in that same section of public and private monies. When you talk about selling air rights, how does that affect the pier itself, is that any money that you would get for the air rights?
So when we sell development rights, it extinguishes the corresponding amount of floor area that we would otherwise be able to build at the selling site. So at, Chelsea Piers or at Pier 40, those are the 2 places where we have sold development rights from previously. There's a certain amount of FAR that, the M23 underlying zoning districts generates at the commercial sites, and this doesn't apply at the regular park sites. If we sell development rights, then that means that we can't build that same amount at the pier as of right, period, not even just as of right, we can move more zoning rights from another pier. So in the case of Pier 76, if we were selling, we wanted to fund Pier 76 so that you had the maximum amount of public open space and so that we had the maximum amount to generate potential FAR from. We might say that a different site would be the better one for trying to generate revenue at the pier. So we might say, for example, right, that's a 1-story building that doesn't have anything on it. We're allowed to build a 2-story building on that under existing FAR. So we might say, okay, if someone were interested in buying from us, we might say, we think, and it's up to city planning ultimately, but we might say, we think the better selling site is Pier 83 for 50,000 square feet of space or whatever, and that would give us the abilities to retain it for Pier 76 for whatever is in the future, because we need that money.
Okay,
Or not. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, my main question was if the development rights came from Pier 76, if that was going to influence the use that we could.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
And then
It
money
could,
from the
but-
sale from another pier could be assigned to the
To-
building.
Right, yes.
Yes.
Okay, oh, this gives you a lot to play with.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But it would influence the use if it's going to be, say, a tall building, might maybe cut it in half.
If the sale came from Pier 76.
Right.
So it doesn't have to, so Pier 81 we could sell from Pier 81 and then take that money and assign it to be spent to build Pier 76 as pier.
And how high can we build at Pier 76 right now, as it stands?
It's 2 FAR, so it sort of depends on the floor area. So, basically it's
It's the entire site
Yes.
twice.
2.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so,
But-
and then.
However you
But then you
figure
take,
that.
so you take those sugar cubes, you go, if each square, 2 squares stack high. If you stack them all into one,
Yeah.
you'd have one very small but incredibly tall tower, or you could have any configuration of bulk pieces of
So you
it.
can move it however you want, so it could be 2 stories, it could be 7,
And there are,
depending on.
yeah,
how-
there are some limits in state planning about height, bulk,
Right,
whatever.
right,
other
we're still
height
subject to
limits.
other aspects of zoning too.
But then that
Yeah,
also influences what needs to be done for the piles.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But Jennifer, if we do say that, okay, it's okay, we think we would allow exploration to be an office building. We can determine, maybe not in this letter necessarily, but what that footprint should look like. Should it be wide and low? Robert gave me this actually, this example, should it be, far spreading and low on the pier? Or can it take up a small footprint but go a little higher? Or should it, like you said, should it be just even with, because we don't want it taller than Jacob Javits, the sightline. So that's to play with a little bit later at what goes on the site, but,
Yeah, the main thing was just what kind of flexibility we had as we started to talk about the uses, if we were limited in any kind of way when we go.
so that's the one good thing, and Katie, I know your hands up, I'll get you. The one good thing about this, and I really want to encourage people to think this is a special project. Or it could be a special project. It could be something magnificent, or, it could be a park with an office. I mean, it depends what people want and what people think is a priority. But that would be, I'll put that in later, that it should be added to this principle, statement of principles, but, Katie, go ahead.
With the air rights, you said, possibility of, circle line. Does the park have a listing of available air rights that can be sold so that we understand what that looks like?
We've, when the act was changed in 2013, it's the piers where we're allowed to have commercial uses. True commercial uses, so we don't have the calculations of the number of square feet because we actually have to hire a surveyor and everything to do that, but basically, it was Pier 40. We sold air rights from Pier 40, which is what enabled us to rebuild all the piles under there.
So then Pier 40 is off the table, those air rights.
Correct.
So what piers do you still have potential air rights?
There are remaining air rights at Chelsea Piers. Now that is a fully built out site essentially, but there are some remaining air rights at Chelsea Piers. Pier 76 has them today. Pier 81 and 83, because those are commercial piers under the Hudson River Park Act. Pier 57 is not anymore because it's a historic site and it was already upzoned, and it's an M15, but because it's a historic pier, that was already, addressed there. And I think Pier 98 is the last one.
And I just wanna channel people again, only because, I like when people kind of riff, I think it's great. The air rights is gonna be specifically land use. We are not gonna talk about the selling of air rights. I mean, when it comes up, no, it's okay, because you have to have a working knowledge, right? To know, when it comes to the air and the height, of what's on the pier, that's a different story. But when it comes to where it's gonna be sold and, can they move further east, and land use will take that over, and that's gonna be their, kind of, barrel of questions for them.
We've been bouncing around the bulk of the building in this conversation. And I'm just going to say that if I have my preference, I'd rather a higher building, but not too high, and a smaller footprint to enable larger portion of the park to be park. That's my position. I don't know if it's the committee's position, but if we could express a position, then we don't have to bounce around this same story all the time, every time height and bulk comes up.
True, I think that I just want to talk about the uses of what we're going to accept and not accept for exploration. Katie, then Brad, and then Candace.
So two other questions. One, Leslie, in your email, you alluded to the 50% of the space must be remaining public and that wasn't threatened. I didn't notice that reflected in the statement of principles.
Already.
Okay.
The law requires a minimum, and then within here, there are pieces that discuss, and I'm looking for exactly where it is. It does talk about maximizing those, and it's definitely on page 3, designed to maximize usable space is one of them, and then there's another one in here.
I guess what I'm asking, is there any benefit to just reiterating?
We can definitely put in a line, knowing that 50% minimum is saved, because what we're gonna decide now has nothing to do with that 50%.
Yeah, but
It has
just,
to do with revenue
in
generated.
discussing the
But you're
statement
saying
of
to
principles.
reiterate that.
Yeah, and discussing that we are talking about potentially changing the act, just enshrining that we.
Yes,
And then my other question, if housing was already off the table, What's the difference between housing and a hotel?
They are different
Revenue.
types of land uses under the city.
Just because one is commercial and one is residential, but essentially they function in the same way
So
of
it wasn't,
multi-floor, small rooms.
the
holding
discussion
people.
about it wasn't about functionality as much.
Okay,
When our consultant was part of Pier 76, that's where we're looking at housing, the stacked costs that go into, building housing, particularly like it having an affordable housing component and others increases, the cost to make it essentially not financially viable in a way that a hotel was.
so it's more of a cost prohibitive thing and not that you can't have a 11-story building filled with people.
Especially given the working assumption, we all, including the trust had, that there is no scenario where 100% of it is luxury housing, right? So when you assume that a given is affordable, is essential, then that makes it even less viable.
And in particular, once you start talking about the expense of the piles and the deck and all the pieces going into it, and any additional costs where this structure has to subsidize anything beyond essentially the park, which is what it is doing, it makes it not financial, doesn't generate.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying that there should be housing, I was just questioning if hotels would also potentially be off because it's
You
similar.
also end up getting with people owning, prime waterfront real estate there.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want housing, I just want to know the difference between housing and hotel.
That it was a financial impact.
Okay.
Brad, before we go to Brad, Janine, I sent you some slides earlier today. Can you pull up the evaluation matrix? The one that has the anchor uses and supplemental uses? If you see that, Brad, go ahead. So people can see it on the screen.
I kind of want to reiterate what Matt said, that if we could stick to the recommendations and move forward with that, and then define later some more ideas where my mind is. But I just want to point out, since de Blasio left office, there's not been one permit, application for a hotel in the entire city of New York. Because of what he changed with the hotel, there's been not one hotel permit put out, so for us to think it's gonna change, this is, so, we probably, it's okay to leave it there, but it's probably not gonna happen. So I just want to point that out.
What was
Okay to
that?
leave, wait, okay to leave what there?
He did a thing with the unions, and so.
It's a
It's not,
special permit process.
that's right, that's right. And not even one developer has even put in, even though all our hotels are sold out, that he killed it.
Janine, it says the evaluation matrix. Comparison summary.
Oh, this is the wrong one, sorry, one second.
Yeah, sorry, I know there's another matrix, sorry. Candace, go ahead.
So I guess just for the environment part of this, if we're thinking, sugar keeps building up, I particularly wouldn't want another glass building on that side, and if it does, I noticed when we went to the Javits Center and it had the glass that had a certain type, just as environment, if something does get built, if we can just go with the recommendation that it has the special dots in the glass.
The birds say.
For the bird safe, because if we're gonna build something on there, I run there around the area, see dead birds, don't wanna run on that river and see dead birds, so.
Oh, go ahead.
Following up on Brad's comments about hotel, did the task force discuss this when they were looking at hotels as a possible use? That,
To be truthful, hotel was considered to be on the edge of would it be viable.
on the edge,
More of a long shot.
It's more of a long shot, right? But from our perspective, this is long haul. As we said the last time, it took us 15 years to do Pier 57, like, we don't know what could change.
And also, this is just to allow them to explore it.
Yeah.
Just remember, it's not, we want a hotel and we
Exactly.
need the hotel money.
Right.
It's, if you get a hotel, we would be okay with it. Listen, this room might say.
My question was,
Hold on,
how does
hold on, 1 minute.
me not want a
That's what I'm
hotel
saying.
and decide we don't want it?
That's what I said, this room might decide that is under the housing, parking garage, list. That we don't want a hotel, that could very well be. So, I think it's not, as far as the mechanisms of how we get this or how not to, is not our charge right now, though it will come up. This is more, here, we will, this committee and eventually CB4 and the community hopefully as a whole, say, these are okay possibilities to explore. See what you could do with it, Brad, and we'll.
I think there should be another evaluation, you know, that we have at the top there. You know, I talked to Jeffrey and I've been looking into it, you know, there's those carbon eating plants now, right? And they actually generate money because they are companies are paying them to pay to capture the carbon. Now, we are in one of the most polluted areas in the whole city of New York. It would be ideal to put one of those that generates and also helps with the environment and brings in the income. So I think there should be a category of, you know, environmental businesses up there that I would, you know, like if you look at the one that's in Amsterdam where they actually recycle and it's got a ski slope on it and it's got all that. I mean, that's an opportunity I think that our community could really back and also generate you a lot of money.
Would you suggest we put that in the?
Well, I just think we have office, we have retail, I just think there should be an environmental business for profit. You know, not a farm.
We can add that to the statement of principles.
I just think it really needs to be looked into because they're generating a lot of money.
What is it,
Technology
eating
is-
plants?
Yeah, it's another, I don't think it's in the carbon.
Plant, oh.
Like an environmental.
So right now, just to, our statute prohibits manufacturing, and this is right now, it's probably a tweak on that you're saying, right? So it would have to have clarity about, an environmentally focused industrial use or something, but I don't know what words you would use for that, you should,
Describe it.
yeah.
Great.
I'm hopeful that, like, I'm sort of tying together Brad and Candace's point, but I believe in the principles, it would be appropriate to add that any uses must not be harmful to existing wildlife, both on the pier and in the surrounding area. And then to the extent that it is possible, any new construction or new accessories that are added to the pier, should consider how they further, the reduction in emissions, for the pier itself, as well as improving things such as, particulate matter in the air, and pollution in the community as well.
I would go further and say it should even be an environmental beacon. I think this, if we're starting from scratch, this should be, it should be all, not even what is regulated now. This is gonna be there for years and years and years. And I think I'm gonna sing the same song when we get to NYCHA, and then when we get to Port Authority. This is not just what's environmentally cool and sound and great now or 10 years from now. It's what's gonna be great 50 years from now. And so I think I would like to, if no one objects, to include that in the letter as a little tweak on the statement of principles and just.
Well, I absolutely say that.
Yeah,
It's not that we get the environmental advisory board, but if we talk about reconfiguring the pier. And then people come out and say, well, you moved the pile 20 feet over there and it affects the fish. That's a problem, right? We're kind of locking ourselves in.
well, it's a greater good.
And I think we have to really, if we're gonna say something like that, because they're gonna have to go through environmental impact, just like Little Island and all that. I just think, I don't want us to make that statement and then lock ourselves into some reconfiguration.
Yeah.
And, you know.
I think we can, I think maybe we can say it as in what will future be built on there. And say that we want, you know. Look
So
towards the future.
not in reference to the pile deck, but in
No,
reference to the.
like wherever the structures are, whatever the uses are, you know, these all should be, like Brad said, like, these all should be solar light, you know, like things like it should be environment, we should be looking for new type of clean energy or.
But it's changing very fast.
It's changing, exactly, it's changing very fast.
When we get at the plan, in the planning, it should be covered.
Yeah.
Whatever is prevalent at the time should be considered, yeah, and it's not today, it's years from now.
Lowell, then Roberta, then Ronald.
Since we're talking about if we build something, it's gotta have a height restriction.
Yeah.
What was originally considered, this goes back, how many of you been president under Madeline? Madeline wanted the height of the exhaust tower for the Lincoln tunnel that's there, using that as a height beacon. That's a little bit higher than Javits. You know, we want to keep it to the height of Javits or whatever. We should put something in there so we don't end up with an office tower.
Okay, so why don't we, I do wanna, just concentrate on the statement of principles, and we can move on to the uses. And then, 'cause I think that kind of would go into the uses, or what could be the revenue, generating uses, but go ahead, Roberta, then,
I'm purely thinking both from just to kind of clarify the last thing I was mentioning there about connecting this to like sustainability standards as well as mitigation harm to local wildlife, to the extent that there is a change in the act. Then like having those things as to the extent practicable to do these things makes sense. To the extent it is practicable to, you know, protect wildlife and to, you know, further sustainability measures in the construction of any additional thing, I think that is an appropriate thing to ask for in legislative.
great. Go ahead.
No, mine is a usage type question, so we'll.
Okay,
go to the next section.
Now, I just wanna, and I touched upon it, I wanna see what you guys think. When people envision this pier, and this is going to directly, and I don't mean specifics, but when you envision this pier, this is gonna go to this directly, this matrix. Do we envision this as like a nice, you know, an office and a park, or do we envision this as a special place that, you know, this like some, I don't wanna say crazy idea, but something special that could be a tour, a destination site? Or do we just think of it as just purely open land and, you know, maybe something like a hotel? I don't know what people are, because I think that can be also in the,
Well, 50% is a park, so that's happening.
50% is open space.
So that's what I'm just saying, but it's open space park. I totally agree with you, Leslie. It needs, I mean, if we want to call it the Eiffel Tower of our neighborhood, then let's call it that. It needs to be something amazing.
Does everybody? Go ahead. London Eye, you know him.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need
So
a.
something-
Like Chicago with the Navy Piers, how they developed that area, that's what my vision is, not a little teeny office space, we have nothing office space.
Oh, we're gonna talk about users, then I wanna ask my question.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just last question about hotel. Did the task force approach Javits about them being a possible investor in a hotel? I mean, it would seem to me that there would be a natural type of partner in that. Since they have so many convention people coming in, they would be interested in a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons, I directly talked to the head of Javits a couple of times, and I'm going to be talking to him again too. It's something that makes some sense for Javits. Long term, probably makes some good sense. The first answer that I got was, they would just frankly like something nice for their people going to conventions to go to. They would like a nice green park too. They don't have an immediate need for the hotel, but could that change in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years? Yes, and right, a business person developing an idea for us to consider, think that's a winner, yes.
And we can also, when we go through this, we can say, yes, you know, the committee thinks that it'll be okay to explore office, though it wouldn't be our first choice. You know, like we can definitely couch how the committee feels. Everything, it doesn't say, okay, go for this, this, and this. It could be degrees. Christopher and then Katie.
Yeah, I have mild to severe concerns about a hotel.
Well, can we say that until we finish the principles?
Absolutely, but I just want to be, like, if we're looking for an environmental standard, I don't think we should be inviting cars to Hudson River Park. That's,
Okay, like, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
So we agree on these uses? I don't know.
No, hold on, stop, no, we're gonna talk, are we all in agreement that this should be a special place? The reason why I'm saying that is because I would like to add or edit, or in the letter, talk about the statement of principles, what we're looking at, big picture. Go ahead, Roberta.
Just to your most recent question, you know, ought this be a special place? I don't necessarily, you know, contend that it shouldn't be, but the thing that I am afraid of, or the thing that in my mind is the top priority, is making sure that we're able to finance the like piles and the decking so that it does not, I guess, fall into the Hudson River. Is that what happens? So, yes. So that, in my mind, when I'm thinking about vision, is to me the most important thing. And to that extent, being able to keep, you know, as many options open for the trust to explore, while also, you know, staying true to our principles, whatever those are useful. The other thing that I do think is worth mentioning that came out of the task force is that iconic tourist attractions can at times cannibalize traffic from each other, so that every time you add a new one, it hurts each marginal, you know, like tourist attraction. And so there could be a point in the future, you know, maybe we have the greatest observation deck on the Hudson, or, you know, this fancy new amusement ride, whatever it is. And then, you know, decades go by and decades go by, and it becomes something that doesn't generate revenue for the trust. And yeah, that's an example, but I just felt like that was perhaps a piece of information that I received in our task force meeting that I don't know has been expressed here, and I did want in that, like, that larger context.
Well taken. Lowell and then Katie.
In terms of principle, I think we should say that when the trust is evaluating potential uses, they should favor uses that give us the most open space possible. So if there's a choice between something that's 50% open space and 70% open space, we should get 70% open space.
Still Katie?
They ought to say preference to water dependent uses.
I agree with what Lowell said, and even a little further, like going back to what Brad said about carbon capture, and that finding a way to maximize revenue in the smallest possible footprint. Because if it's between a 4 or 5 story office building or like a 2-story facility that does carbon capture, that's much smaller footprint, but they generate the same revenue, I'd much rather have the smaller footprint. And then also going back to what Lowell was saying about heights, I think that should be something that's included in the statement of principles. If we know for a fact we don't want anything that's higher than the Javits Center, that should be a principle, not a usage.
Yeah, but I don't wanna, now we're limiting what could be in the revenue, we start shrinking.
But that's okay. I mean, if that's.
I mean, I think then we limit what we're gonna see. We could say, you know what, that is too high, and we don't like it now, but to say it now, I mean, a 2-story building, I'm just not.
Okay.
That's my opinion,
Brad, I wasn't
What's the
stating
height
it.
of,
I'm sorry, Katie.
what's the height of the Javits Center?
Yeah, I was just gonna answer. I think that the Lincoln Tunnel vent shaft, which is right next to it, is about 150 feet. I think it's
So
right.
how many stories is that?
And also,
We're thinking,
14, 15.
but also, guys, we're talking about heights of different things. If it's a roller coaster, it could be higher. If it's an office building, we don't want it high, you know, so.
Set below as
Or-
well.
that's what I'm getting at, I don't wanna limit, you know, I spoke to Vineet the other day and I said, hey, you know, is it something, can we get your students to work on and some really vision ideas to get the things working, and you would love to talk to Noreen about it and getting his students to do that. You know, I just don't wanna limit the fantastic ideas that can bring in the revenue. We kind of have our standards here, and let's wait to see what comes back.
Yeah, because this will all go under review. Go
Brad,
ahead.
part of the problem you have though is some of what may come back, there may be momentum towards something that we know now that we don't want to see.
I think the height that matches the vent, I'm okay with. If that's
I'd
a
be
limit,
okay with that too,
if that's
if
a
we call
limit
that a limit.
within the group, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go 30 stories, but I don't wanna limit to 2 either, you know, if something really.
I was just saying, we should, the smallest possible, we should preserve the most open space.
Well, I think that's,
You know, that, because right now, all they require is 50%. And what I'm envisioning is a situation where the trust comes down to, we have these 2 great proposals, they're both great. We should tell them to favor the one that gives us the most open space.
And don't forget, private could be open space too. It might not be the 50% of open space, but there could be something on a roof that they have. So it's not, you know, we could envision that as well, or if it's a, I don't know, a Ferris wheel.
I mean, I'm a golfer.
And that's
I
open,
think like
that's
a
open
multi-year
space,
par
but it's,
three
or
course.
if it's a, you know, a racetrack, I know, open space. Anyway, so if we put in the state, in our letter, the principals, that we do expect this to be a special place or a, I don't know, however you guys, is that okay with this committee or?
I agree with Roberta. I think we should leave it open so that we have room down the road to decide. Because I mean, I think that we can want a special place, but to limit it right up front, like what is special, how do you define that, what does that mean?
I don't think we have to limit it, I don't think we have to put what we think it is in the letter. I think I think.
If we don't define it, then how do you?
Meaning we can
Oh, I
say,
use the word dynamic.
yeah, or we could say a destination area, like that's saying what that is,
Anything you say about that, you're gonna wipe out an office building as a possibility.
not sure.
An office building is a destination place for.
No, well, let's get to our next thing, this,
But
we can
pieces of it could
we
be-
can have, exactly, we can have an office, actually,
Top floors could be, you know, a zoo,
No,
like we don't.
hold on, Janine, can you put up the slide of the footprint of it?
May I make a couple
There's
of comments?
references I sent, but there are footprints too.
Leslie, I guess what I'm thinking about, as this is marinating, is the commercial use. Do we want to put restrictions on that has to be something special or different? Is that what we're looking for, or are you just talking about the pier as a whole should have something that's a destination?
Yes, the latter. And it's not, they're not mutually exclusive.
No, I
So
understand.
when she puts, Janine, do you have just the footprint?
So is it the one with the two photos of the pier?
While Janine is struggling with that, may I make a couple of comments on the
Sure.
conversation?
Oh, wait, Janine, it says scale, yeah, scale, okay, thank you, good. Hold on one second, I want to show people something real quick. So this here, this for example, say they move this out a little bit, whatever, and this is the office building, right? Just say that's a revenue generating, whatever the height is, whatever that, well, where'd it go? Okay. This is the office building, right? That doesn't mean, okay.
I'm so sorry, 1 second.
It's okay, don't worry about it. Oh, but this is.
Okay,
the
can you
office
see it there? Can you see it there?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay.
That this is the office building area. It doesn't mean that over here is on a tourist, like something special, like I'm just saying aquarium, because that was said like 3 years ago. Or it doesn't mean something here can't be something, when I say special, I mean destination area, something that is gonna attract residents and tourists. That doesn't negate,
Grass does that.
it doesn't negate what does?
I said grass can do that in a grass desolate area.
We have a lot of that on here too. It
Not
doesn't
in,
mean that.
not in this area. we
It
don't.
doesn't mean, hold on, it doesn't mean, but that's, the open space is already there. 50% open space is there, all this can be, this like this. This can be 50% open space, but I'm just saying. It's not mutually exclusive, and we didn't even get to the blue highway yet.
I have a question, just in regards to Pier 97. Because that's, you know, in Hell's Kitchen, does that have any grass? Real
Yes.
grass?
Yes.
What percentage of the pier,
I don't
do you have an
know.
idea? Cause I know like that far end is mostly like stone, and then you have the turf
It's a wooden
field.
deck, it's like a wooden deck boardwalk at the western
Yeah.
end, and then there is a grass area that's maybe, I don't know, like a.
Smaller than Pier 84, right?
Yeah, I would guess the grass area, it's just differently configured, maybe, I don't know, it's about a fifth of the overall pier off the top of my head, but I don't really know.
Okay, and this pier you said is massively large, like
Yes.
bigger than Bryant
Yes.
Park.
5.5
See the
acres.
scale diagram.
Yeah,
it's huge.
So. For example, like go down to Pier 63, that is a pretty, what is the largest grassy area of the park? Would that be like Pier 63, Pier 60?
Pier 63, Chelsea Flow,
Is that?
this is that size.
Okay, and then Bryant Park is which one?
This is
That way.
Bryant Park.
Okay, so,
So a lot can fit.
A lot can fit.
yeah, and then is that long skinny one Pier 84?
This is Pier 45. Do you guys know the village?
Okay,
Street
yeah,
Pier?
yeah, yeah, and then
Big
is
Pier.
Pier 84 on there or no?
That's on a different scale diagram, Janine, do you have is that the whole presentation?
Yeah,
I think it's if you can scroll to the slide or two
we
before that.
we put it on one of these.
All right,
It's not-
that's
it's my
okay. I think this
fault.
like illustrates the
Like this
point
is like
of,
Center Plaza
okay,
is this one, like in terms of the combos,
yeah.
like kind of all of the above.
So,
probably fit
so
into the
looking at the space and knowing that Pier 84 is relatively small when it comes to grass space, Pier 97 is relatively small when it comes to grass space. It looks like the largest grass covered pier is down like in Chelsea, the Pier 60 to 63 complex. It would be really great for Hell's Kitchen to have a grassy open area comparable to what's down in Chelsea. I would love that as a use in Hell's Kitchen because we have parks, but they're small.
Yeah.
And most of the parks don't have
Yeah.
grass.
Supposed to be Chelsea.
So we're in.
Give me a
Why can't Hell's
Just
Kitchen
to
be
chime in on it,
nice?
so I think when we talk about, we were talking about open space, when we talk about grass versus other types of park design, a plaza, a boardwalk, a playground, a dog run.
Yeah.
That's all in design in the future,
Yeah,
right now, like that will have to be as part of a comprehensive
right.
look at it. So you guys certainly can say,
So
I don't
I
want
guess
to
my-
spend too much time debating.
Got it. I guess my question would be like, when it comes to the principles and we're talking about open space, do we want to qualify what the open space is?
That
Do we
would-
wanna-
No, we don't.
Two and a
That
half
would be a
acres,
mistake, big, yeah, we
2.5 acres of open space.
yeah, we wanna give ourselves the broad, I mean, we want to, I would think, and would want to give them the broadest definition that we're comfortable with. So they can kind of maneuver financially and in the
Open space
market.
is already defined
Yeah.
for us, and but then once you get into it, we have, I think, a pretty extensive track record of really doing a lot of community work and engagement on park design when we do it. It's just, we have to get there first, and at this point, it's.
So it is entirely possible somewhere down the line, having as much grass space as down in Pier
If that's what
Chelsea
the
is
community
possible.
wants. If that's, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marie.
I just wanted to suggest, up to you, but the two, under design principles on page 3, I think you have, 3 places where Leslie, the gist of your idea maybe could be added if you wanted to kind of reference that.
The design to maximize usable space, that
Well,
one.
that's sort of Katie's point, but then the other one, the unique waterfront location and the park's
Yes.
environmental stewardship mission should be central to any design. To me, I think if you wanted to say like that, you know, this says should capitalize on a unique waterfront location to provide access to and engagement to the river and be a blankety blank, if you wanted to say something, right?
Okay, yeah,
And this is also to add that here, stuff says, here's redesign sustainability is always in mind. And then it also talks about the difference in the other pieces.
I mean, well, okay, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going, a technical question, Leslie. The legislation that we need changed and the rules that we need changed directly affect what they can present to us, right? So isn't that why we need to get this part moving out? That's why you wanted to get it out?
It's, Janine, I'm sorry, I have to do it to you. Can you go back to that matrix? Which we can talk about now. That's what you're talking about.
You know, because then if we don't get that changed, then we are limiting ourselves in this room, what's gonna happen?
Yeah,
So we have to, in my mind, back what Hudson River Park Trust needs to take the handcuffs off.
correct.
I would love to hear a complete wish list. But, you know,
I think it's general uses because when we change the act of general uses, a lot of things can go under those general uses for later, right? So if we say we want, I don't know, you know, an office or something, then we can talk about what that looks like.
well, I mean, isn't it freeing them up for air rights, freeing them up on
Yes.
use, freeing them up on reconfiguration, like
Correct.
all those kind of things is what we.
Right, and to Lowell's point though, conversely, if we don't want to give momentum to anything that we're uncomfortable with, then what?
That gets done later, we don't.
It could, but to his point, to respect his point. So,
He's got the height, he's got his height.
go on.
Just one thing about the height, because I'm also leaning towards like, I want to try to give the trust as much flexibility, because I think we'll have time to sort of, I mean, certainly refine this later on, but I just wanted to point out also on page 3, which I think speaks to sort of like the height restrictions, that it also takes into consideration the protection of views, north and south and west. So I think anything that gets proposed here, it's listed in the principles that those should remain clear, like we want to
Doesn't
make sure.
conflict with the current.
Right, like, we're not gonna get a tall building because we're protecting the views and the corridors both in all directions, so I just kind of want to highlight that as well, like, I feel like that's protection to sort of
Yeah.
keep those views intact.
And I mean, I think we all can also acknowledge we have a good working relationship with Hudson River Park Trust, so as we move forward, you know, I think all.
We're not here on Zoom.
Will be addressed. Yes, they're here. Okay, so let's move to this, because this is what we really gotta work on.
So can I sort of summarize some of what I heard?
Sure, of course.
I think the letter is going to say that this is a first pass. This is something that is a living document. We're gonna write it. We're gonna look at it, and we're gonna possibly change it later on because we're gonna change, so that we're not locked in. Somebody said we're worried about being locked in. This is not a lock-in letter. That's point number one. Somebody was talking about environmental stuff earlier, and I heard I didn't hear that come to a good conclusion. I think the environmental issues on the pier may be a business of some kind. That's one. The operation of the pier itself, that's two, solar and etc. And activities. This comes into the views. Maybe the activities on the pier and the views could be combined with an aquarium, an underground look at underwater look at fish. They do that a little bit on Pier 40, I understand, but this is a perfect place to do some of that. Anyway, environmental is a big issue, and I think you're absolutely right. This has got to be a destination place. Is it an amusement park? Is it a fish tank? Is it a roller coaster? Is it the New York Eye, which Leslie's been shooting for the last number of weeks? And then there's the issue of height. Maybe the building is as high as the Javits Center, but just to take Leslie's example, the Eye of New York doesn't have to be restricted in its height, and that's a whole. Constructing something like that involves support from underneath and footprint on the pier, and then finally, yes, we've got to say in this letter that no matter what we do, it's going to be a melange of stuff. There are a lot of good ideas on the table, and there are going to be a lot of things happening on this pier all at once. But it's got to be 50% open.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Minimum.
You want to maximize it.
So let's move, I think those are all, and I wrote those notes down, Marty, to incorporate in our letter. But let's move to these, because these are the uses that's was presented to us as possible revenue generating. Obviously, you see what's the highest revenue generating, what would be the lowest.
Well, don't forget, Leslie, that this table that we're looking at is a pretty good projection of what might happen, but it's a projection. And one of the things the trust is going to have to do is find the people to actually fill the slots, and the money projections from somebody that we are not in this room now aware of may be different than what's on this chart.
Right, but I think why this is just to explain the accepted uses so they can change the act in Albany, that's all. The whatever the revenue, looks like down the road that's gonna be a different conversation. Right now, I think Albany just wants a letter, or they just want a letter of what we think would be acceptable or not acceptable. Exploration.
If we put a list of stuff that's acceptable, we've already restricted ourselves. If Albany is going to do some kind of a legislation that says ABC is acceptable, then DEF is by definition not.
Right. I think, Marty, they gave us a template here of uses that they have investigated that would give them enough revenue, or a combination of these. It could be 2 or 3 things of these that would give them revenue, working revenue to keep the park, to maintain the park, right? Someone here, we could say, you know what, we don't want a hotel, we just don't think it's right, we don't like it there, whatever the reason, and we can limit that. But I think in this stage of the game to broaden what they would be able to play with as far as general uses. Not building height, not, it's just what they could even explore. So right now, they can't explore any of this. They couldn't even make a phone, you know, they can't even say, let's look at this and see if it would be good on the pier because the act prohibits it. We have to have them change the wording of the act. And I think that first piece of it will then propel us, or it will, I shouldn't say propel, but it will eventually get us to, bigger and more detailed conversations of where, when, why, what, and all that stuff.
So are you framing a letter, Leslie, framing a letter addressed to a state legislature that says we need a change in the Hudson River Park legislation with regard specifically to just this pier that will give
Correct.
Hudson River Park Trust the greatest possible latitude to explore businesses, destination places, activities on this pier, so that we can have a fuller conversation when they've identified various possibilities as to whether we like what they've identified or not.
Yes.
So who are we writing the letter to?
We are writing to Hudson River Park Trust and our local state elected officials.
And we're asking for a change in legislation. That's the main ask of the letter.
Yes, with these specifics though, with what these categories
With
are.
qualifications.
Yes. You know what? I'm sorry, I have to step out. It's my daughter. Brad, go ahead, and then Katie.
Yeah, Marty, you said something earlier specifically to this pier. We talked about this last month. I don't know why if we're changing the act, that it would be specifically to this pier. We need to take their hands off of, they're changing legislation. It allows them on other parts of the pier to go after other things. So I don't want to limit it just to this pier. If we're changing the rules, we should allow them to free up on other parts of the pier. This is my opinion.
Well, that's a political strategy, and I don't know how to call it. Is it better to ask for legislation that's focused just on this pier, or the much broader legislation that you're what's going to pass? Because I'm concerned about getting this pier, excuse me, it's the wrong way to put it, off the ground.
Well, I think, you know, the park is being built over the last 20 years. We've kind of moved our way up. It's not at the beginning, Marty, and I think we got to free them up. I think, I mean, I don't want to speak with them, they're here, but they said to us last time, that would allow them to explore a lot of other options.
Marty, the legislature has, for going back to 2013, passed pier-specific legislation. There's specific legislation for 57. There's specific legislation that was passed in 2020 to get rid of the tow pound that didn't affect the rest of the park. And if we try and pass legislation that's going to change things for the entire park, this is never going to get done. Because you're going to then implicate Pier 40 and activate everything that happens there, and Robert's going to shoot himself.
So you're saying, in effect, that Brad's suggestion of very broad legislation is probably not the correct strategy.
What's best for the park?
I will say, just for our purposes, and I don't, you know, we've engaged in this conversation specifically around Pier 76. And I don't want anyone to feel that we are trying to pull some sort of bait and switch. Like, we've kind of talked, it has been centered around what is commercially viable at Pier 76 as part of a potential rebuild. And like, you know, could be a conversation overall about changes, but I would be concerned that we're so far into this process now that I think reopening opening the topic to everything. In the
So
park,
the lowest point you want to Pier Pacific Islands.
I think.
So Brad, I so appreciate the vote of confidence, but we don't want to be greedy. And I think there are things even for us where it's probably good to have some protections in place. Because who knows what could happen at some point, and we haven't studied other places in that way. But it is possible that someday we might ask to change the footprint of another pier, and we could.
One more thing though, remember, I just want to make sure if we're gonna go forward, Leslie. I like a column, and it wasn't studied, but you know, it should be environmental business. You know, profit, you know, not a non-for-profit, but a profit, you know, yeah, for-profit B Corp.
Commercial.
So, you know, for-profit, environmental,
Like.
carbon capture.
Can I
facility.
apologize for
There's a
that.
lot related to that as well.
In the industrial, environmentally focused industrial use.
Wrapped in a park.
Okay,
Which is.
I'm just gonna get, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I missed like maybe 5 minutes of that, I apologize. I just do, because we do have 2 other very big items on our agenda. So, I have a question about the in-water uses, and there was something with the Blue Highway. Is that what in-water, that's not what in-water use is, right? That's more
There
commercial.
were a range of in-water uses that people talked about, so it could be a marina, it could be a historic boat alongside, it could be the kind of delivery, from, you know, waterborne transport to the pier and then last mile or more inboard somehow. That's the Blue Highway thing. So there's a wide range of in-water uses that people sort of discussed, none of which would probably pay the bills for everything,
Right.
but
But we say that could be a component, we would
Yeah.
allow that to be a component. I would think though, the Blue Highway would be a bigger monetary.
potential, it's sort of, and we did flag that there were some landside things, if none of you want cars and deliveries, like that's another thing to just think about, but again, like having the
Not all.
possibility that cars that go inboard everywhere. I think the Blue Highway idea is really interesting to people, and I think it just is another one that needs more like.
And I think it would foster micro mobility also.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about, Leslie, like, you
Yeah.
know, I wouldn't say the drone, but we said it could go from water to air.
Yeah,
To bike across
Yeah.
and.
but so
I think
to
That environment,
simplify it, is everyone would everyone be comfortable, or comments on the, if it's the Blue Highway or some sort of environmental, like, you know, that type of water usage? Of course, I think with what you did, there's more environmental concerns and hurdles you have to jump, right?
Times
Because-
that we don't control, but,
Yeah.
but having the clarity that it's something that you would consider permissible, and then can I add? It's likely that some of them might need dredging, which again needs, regulatory approvals. But right now, the Hudson River Park Act prohibits dredging except for navigation. And depending on the historic use, it might not be technically navigation or might or might not be. So I think that might be something if you actively want to encourage in-water uses.
I would think in-water uses, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be fine to encourage, only because it expands the footprint
It
a
does,
little
yeah.
of what could be done,
Yeah.
as we, like, is that we're saying, well, it should be this park space, it should be this, but this gives another facet to it.
But that's
It
why I
should have
didn't bring up
another-
that environmental thing before, because before we bring that up, we start to lose these components.
Yeah.
We're saying we're environmental, can't move a pier, can't dredge, but now we tie our hands. I don't want to
Yeah,
tie
no.
our hands just yet.
Yeah, I mean,
Right now.
so is in-water uses okay with everybody, or does anyone have any big,
And they needn't be expensive. I just wanna say that it sounds like they're building some big fancy marina. You could build a damn demi dock from prefab stuff you order from Oregon. It doesn't cost much.
I do have one question about the Blue Highway.
yes,
It seems like that would be more ships coming in, we've talked about like shore power and pollution and all of that already, and then trucks, or, because it's probably not gonna be just somebody coming up on a bike to a ship, like it's gonna be more cars, trucks, things like that, so it just seems like it'd be added traffic
So
and
just-
possible pollution.
just
I
think,
wanna-
this is for years and years to come, hopefully those trucks will be electric, we're talking 50 years, you know,
Right.
many years down the road.
Right, I just wanna make sure that we're like seeing that it's gonna be added traffic to a place that's supposed to be pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, do we not think those two can't work in compatibility?
I mean, I think we've seen at Chelsea Piers that there's been a problem with like the trying to go through, I know that was like already built and we had to kind of figure out what to do there, but I just think we should at least note as we're going through this, that we're talking about something that would add traffic to a park that we wanted to keep, like, I don't know, pedestrian, and that was the point, that we wanted tourists to come over, we wanted residents to come over, we
Right.
wanted people on.
I mean, it is, I mean, we do, we can note you, if we do say the Blue Highway is okay, we can note to promote micro mobility, because I think some of the talk was it would come, the trucks would be in Jersey, I mean, that was an idea. It would come over, and then last leg would be from the pier, you know, like, it would be that type of Blue Highway. I think that was task force, that came out of the task force, I believe. we also have to remember that, you know, it is on a highway, right? It's a state, it's a big highway, state highway that already has, obviously vehicular and truck traffic. And that doesn't have to be I mean, it could be, doesn't have to be incompatible, or we could say, no, you know, no trucks, no cars, I just don't, I don't know if that.
No trucks, no cars, I just think that like we're picking, potentially, we're losing a use that would increase things that in the past we've said that we wanted to decrease. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so what do you feel about Blue Highway, Chris and then Roberta?
As it stands, the EDC and DOT looked at a Blue Highway and Blue Highway initiative as something that can have either cargo bikes or electric vans. If we were gonna be specific about this, we'd say no electric vans or no
electric vans?
No electric vans or electric vehicles outside of cargo bikes for last mile delivery.
Well, yeah, I think that might be in the plan, right? That might be in the.
Yeah, I think the concept would be that, I mean, we have various principles here about prioritize safety for pedestrians and bikes, minimize vehicular traffic, right? So presumably, if we have the flexibility under the act, first of all, and then we someday do an RFP, we would be writing all of this up to kind of say, if you're gonna propose something that comes in that needs a car or a truck or whatever, we want you to give us something that thinks about this. We don't wanna have the open space.
Like 94, like 94 is an example, right? We just, you know, that's going on, that's a production, I mean, that's gonna be production trucks and tractor trailer. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, it will be, the design will be where they're moving the pedestrian lane, they're moving the bike lane. They're moving things, so these two can be compatible with one another, hopefully, and maximize the use of that space. Let's see if that comes to fruition.
Somebody might propose something that's super intense with cars and trucks and whatever.
Yeah.
And then we would probably look to the principals and say that doesn't really work.
Yeah, and it would come to this committee and other community probably meetings, and that would be, I guess, Katie. Oh, wait, right, Roberta, sorry, Roberta.
I
then
was
Katie.
literally just gonna echo or just speak to what Noreen mentioned. I think the principles document really is pretty clear about our values with regard to pedestrian access, safety and
Yeah.
circulation and adopt that.
Okay.
So this has kind of been danced around and mentioned, but I guess the way to formally address it is, I would like to make a motion to add to the statement of principles under usage should not occur, no hotel. Because I think if we're talking about, again, as Brad mentioned, hotel permits are an issue. It sounds like, feasibility, it might not be the thing. I'm not saying no offices, I'm just saying no hotel.
Hotels are gonna want trouble.
And cars, and also looking at the open space. Do we want that open space to be an amenity for the community or an amenity for people who are coming and staying at this hotel? And then what happens with that? So I'm not trying to limit anything other than just no hotel, which already sounds like it's not a super viable option anyway.
How do others feel about that?
Well, what if we wanted to have clamping, there? I mean,
Yeah.
those, are things that we're not to development stage, but if we keep an open mind, is what we have, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a 10-story hotel.
How would you secure glamping
I have
on the
no
west side of
idea.
Brad, what Katie said. Guys, to what Katie said, Brad.
I think what you were pointing out earlier was, we are trying to, we're not picking loose now. We're not saying this is what we want now. We're saying we're open to these things legislatively.
I know, but she's saying that, I understand that, but she's saying not, she's saying.
There's no way I can commit to say no hotel.
Well, we'll take a vote right now. I'm just gonna go, because I'm going through this quickly, take a vote right now. Do we want to say absolutely no hotel, or do we want to keep that option open? Whoever says no hotel, please raise their hand. 3, whoever says we want to keep the option open of a possible hotel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any abstentions? Okay, passes, that's it, then we'll do that.
I've got another point though, Leslie, can make me think of what Katie was just saying. When we're talking about the park uses ancillary to whatever else is gonna go on here, do we want to focus on uses for the community or uses as a tourist attraction? Because that's a principal thing, not a.
Are they incompatible?
It may not be. It may not
I
be.
agree with Roberta, yeah, no.
It may not
Look
be,
at Little
but
Island.
we want to specify one or the other. I'm just kind of thinking about it based upon what Katie was saying about, you know, uses for the hotel guests. It made me think of, do we want this? Because if you want to prioritize for just New York City residents, you put in something like a ball field that there are not enough of. If you want to prioritize it for, you know, tourist attraction or whatever, then you put in the Ferris wheel.
But they could be both.
I know they can be both,
Okay.
but which do we want to put in preference to that, is what I'm asking.
Roberta, go ahead, you have something, I don't know.
So I do think that that is addressed in prioritizing high quality public open space with.
What page are you on?
Just in the initial
Okay.
paragraph of the statement of principles. And if you think there's additional language that should be added in, that like must be accessible to members of the community, I think that's perfectly reasonable. But there are certainly tourist uses. I'm thinking about some of the stuff that's come out of Hudson Yards and Manhattan West that is ultimately for tourists, for commuters, is ultimately like a accessible public amenity for people who live in the area. And so it doesn't have to be, it's just possible.
Yeah, Chris?
Public is incredibly broad when anybody wants to translate it with no question of the intent of the trust. It's just that we've dealt with this with Hudson Yards when we talked about public art and how it can be easily manipulated. But I think we're going to focus on something that is for the public good. It needs to address the fact that Hell's Kitchen, in terms of like Manhattan and the greater city, is the least amount of green space. And that there is a cure that needs to be answered that the federal government has said is needed for per capita per body. So if we're talking about public good, we should be talking about the good of the residents of the greater Hell's Kitchen area, not for
Sure.
To the top of page two.
Yeah.
Where, additionally, the neighborhood which Pier 76 is located, Health Kitchens offers very little open space and inclusive Pier 76 is within a state environmentally disadvantaged area. I'll recognize the need to generate revenue for the port, the goal should be to increase the amount of public open space beyond the limit threshold required by the Park Act rules things. The open space must be designed and function at a high quality standard established in other portions of the park, and must not be an afterthought for the commercial use.
Right, and it's now, it's right there already, and also Chris, to your point, which is very valid. We're just talking right now specifically about the revenue generating space, that's it, not the park space, not the, this is just what's gonna make, what they can use or explore that can be revenue generating, that's it, like that, we're not venturing out of that. Because the park space and the open space and whether it's good for the people is not an act change, like the act change is going to be what the commercial use is, right? What the commercial use is for. And that's what they need right now.
But a tourist attraction could be revenue generating, so your question is complicated.
Well, it is, it's right there. On the matrix, so let's go office, let's just keep going, because we know, not that I want to stifle anyone's voice, please raise your hand if you have a strong opinion, but we already are for, or say, yes, explore the in-water uses, Blue Highway, yes, explore hotel, but we can always, like, to Katie's point, if we say, let's explore it, it could say, that would be the lesser, not our first preference, that, we can couch it that way in the letter.
We're not there yet, we're just saying.
No, but we can in the letter, just to give them a heads up, just to give them a,
Guideline.
yeah, just to memorialize, like, just to say it now and be consistent with that, maybe. So let's go to, office, what do people think about office? Are we okay?
Can I make a question?
Yes, please, of course.
Environmental.
That has, Pier 57, right, that Google is the main tenant.
Yes.
Is that something that you envisioned for Pier 76 as well? Is that working out well for you? Is that something you would be open to, you would want? How does that work?
I mean, so economic reality of New York City office market aside, there are we've always thought some nice advantages to office in the sense that parks are usually busiest on weekends and after work. which is usually the opposite of when a lot of offices are busiest. So there's something that is possibly nice about that aspect of the office use, even though we also know that New York City has lots of offices. So we would like to keep office on the table, ideally for us.
Thank you.
What do people think about office possibility? Fine?
I have just a random
Yes,
question.
of course.
On the, remember that wall they're supposed to build? The water retention wall?
Army
If we're
Corps of
thinking,
Engineers.
yeah, if we're thinking about putting a hotel, I'm just thinking the stability of these piers that are gonna have to withstand the water coming up and like.
Yeah, so that-
Cause the wall goes all the way up to 34th. That's
So the wall, that's the wall, it's,
Well, just
it's
let's,
not-
we're thinking ahead in the future.
yeah.
But if there was this, the flooding zone and stuff, we're trying to put something on a pier, like to build a hotel or an office space on that pier, it's gonna be a lot of money on just the renovation on that, on the rebuilding a new pier, and it's only gonna be that 25%. And I'm just, that little thing for just, it doesn't make sense. I
So
feel
no
like it's a waste of-
hotel, I'm sorry.
I feel like it's a waste of money of having the structure of them having to make that pier structurally sound for a hotel or an office space just doesn't make sense, because it's gonna have to withstand hurricane. You know, and I know we have great dock builders that build this stuff, but the same point is that really where you wanna put your money into? Is that the revenue over that gonna be more than what you're gonna get? Is that really?
So from our perspective, that's where we're distinguishing between the cost to build essentially the public infrastructure, the pier and the piles and the open space. And then the reason why we're hoping for flexibility is we'll never know what makes a good commercially viable use in a particular market condition. The trust will never be the expert of that. So right now, like, there can be no hotel rooms or no offices on the ground floor of whatever's built, because zoning already prohibits that, to your point. Like, it's gonna have to be something that can flood on the ground floor or built higher. But maybe there's something that does work. We don't know. I mean, the best scenario that we have from the consultants that we hired is essentially this. And we'd like to someday just kind of see what comes in the door, and if no one responds because we can't make, they say they can't make money, because they won't respond if they don't think they can make money. Then we may have to come back to you.
Yeah.
That was when we were looking at it, for, in the staff presentation, that was the kind of like the pillars of the has to go into it. The trust has to get rent, it has to generate enough revenue to fund its own construction. And then whoever's doing it has to also make their own profit, because we would make business and capitalism. And that's kind of it, those pieces have to add up, which is where, say, residential, we kind of think couldn't support all three, we support two rather than three. But not, couldn't give up the rent it was doing the other two, generating profit and it funded itself. And that's where we're talking about these like kind of anchor uses versus the other, of which do we think it can support. The likely answer is gonna be a combination somewhere of these that adds up in some way. But it's a big task.
It is, I just thinking, you guys have redid the pier and the park and how the floating of it and just the weight of it and how you're using different materials, and a hotel is gonna be something much heavier.
In all likelihood, the hotel would have a different foundation system than the rest of the pier. It would have more piles and a different type of piles in order to be able to do that.
I wanna, move on to, an example for Chris's example with Flex event. And I'm guessing that means like a festival here, like.
From last month,
What?
from last month, Flex event space.
No, I'm saying, you said something about the Flex event. So, that's what, so a Flex event is, say, a festival, or like the wine and cheese festival, whatever it is. Like, to Chris's point, that to me would kind of take away a big footprint of public space, right? Like, it would. I don't know if that's true or not, but it needs a big, large space. It can't go high. It needs a big footprint to keep. I don't know, maybe you can use it in the off hours, but when people aren't using it but that to me, and I don't know, I would love to hear the committee's position or thoughts on it. It would prohibit public use of a giant footprint for maybe a lot of the time, but
For the warm months.
for a big part of the time. So I don't know, again, I'm sure there'll be other space that's still 50% of open space, but then this large footprint would take up a lot of that other designated 50 or less space for commercial use, but Gwen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking of a use that I could see very easily happening there, and that's if you have some stores in there and that kind of thing. Then they may need some office space that's not a good display block space at all, and so they might be willing.
You know, after the flex events? Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, yeah, I mean, like, you mean, you're talking about like if an event promoter might need a
No,
office?
not an event at all. Let's say I have a shop that sells, I don't know, stamps. And I have a table I like to lay them out on, but really, if I'm gonna get serious with somebody, I'm gonna wanna take him in a back room and talk to him. And so you're gonna need some space that is not ideal for displaying stuff, but it's an office space, so I can see wanting to use part of that.
So commercial retail.
Yeah.
I don't know if retail is one of the,
We are already allowed to do retail in.
oh, so you don't need a change in the act,
We
okay.
don't need change in the act for that, but you're right,
Yeah.
you're talking about kind of ancillary to the
Yeah.
retail, yeah.
To go to the flex event though, and Christopher, the reason why I mentioned that is because you,
I called out last month.
oh, you did?
Their use of the pier already through American Express.
Oh,
For,
right, the special.
for tennis, and it was pretty much the totality of the pier for its use, and so I question whether or not that, and Rob had responded as to whether or not. That use should be the totality of the space, or it could be minimized, and the preference of the trust for his response was that the preference is to use as much space as possible in the pier to generate as much revenue as long as possible.
And I would think, to that point, I would think, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't know. I would think if that was one of the uses, or that is a use, then you would have to fill that out a lot, right? It would have to be filled up weekend after weekend after weekend, which really would preclude us from.
So we spent a lot of time at the task force talking about the trade-offs associated with this, because we sort of wouldn't know exactly what would come in the door on this, right? We've had some fantastic things in the park, the AVP volleyball tournament, where, you know, it was free, though you could watch it. But basically the money was in the sponsorship and the fact that it was on ESPN and it was broadcast, right? And that took over, that was put on Gansport and on Pier 26 once upon a time. That pays us money. It's kind of like a sponsorship model. Chris's point about Annex is true. It was $500,000 for 3 weeks. Most of Pier was actually open and not used by that. But we can't count on that.
Right.
Like, in order for that to be reliable income stream, we would sort of probably have to have some kind of long-term arrangement or whatever. So is it a concert pier? Is it an indoor-outdoor?
And I would imagine, Maureen, the aesthetics on that though wouldn't be pleasing when it's not in use.
Well, so
Or am I?
field operations gave a bunch of precedent examples. There's a very cool pier in Montreal that is sort of one of these things. Like in the summer months, they've got a lot of different stuff. Sometimes it's just public and sometimes it's not. I'm not advocating for this. This probably doesn't need directly a Hudson River Park Act change right now because it is open space.
But we can comment on it if we feel.
But I do think it's fair to say that it probably wouldn't be purely grass. It would need a fair amount of pavement.
Right, yeah.
People are interested in this because otherwise it would be a dust bowl if it was used a lot. So we did want people to kind of think about it. There were people who liked the idea of this. I mean, this is sort of one of those uniquely in Manhattan things, maybe. Or maybe it is too much pavement and people don't like it.
I'll open it to the committee, this one particular use.
I prefer grass.
Okay, Roberta?
I mean, it is just in the way that it's been used, it's a uniquely large space. And to have it available open, both there have been like free community planned events like the salsa dancing stuff. Like, this is useful. I think some of the private events have been like also generally useful, but I do want to be considerate of I think Chris's point, which I think is very helpful. We don't want to create a majority privatization of the pier. And considering time as a variable there, and specifically time in a prime time, time, whether that be
Memorial
time of
Day
day,
weekend,
yeah,
yeah,
whatever it
right,
is.
right.
That might be sort of a guiding principle to say, you know, these are the parameters around a festival use.
Right, so what, do we say yes to festival use?
I'm very confused. We are opening this up for options. Now they haven't even given us options on this and we're saying no. That's what I don't get.
But,
I'm confused.
but it's not, it's okay to say no if people feel no. I don't
No, I'm just
understand.
saying, we're given options for them to come to us with use.
But,
And then at that point, we're like, no, we want grass, or no, we don't mind.
but a flex, but I think, I mean, a flex event or
We're just killing things right off this list.
there's not one thing, well, we haven't killed anything yet.
No, that's my point.
Oh.
I thought the point was, we were agreeing on this list, and then when they start to come back to us for uses, that's when we start really getting into the.
No, I mean, I must have misinterpreted my email. I said, if there is something that we really don't think is the best use for our neighborhood or port or whatever we think, if we really don't think that would fit, right? Yeah, if we really don't think that would fit, then let's not have them go down that like, why are they gonna go down that avenue and spin their wheels, and then they're just gonna come back and we're gonna say, you know what, we really don't like that. I would envision, Brad, you're right. Most of this, we would say, you know what, in some way, shape or form, most of this is acceptable to us on depending on other parameters. The what? Yeah, depending on what it looks like, but we don't want, I don't know,
A hell of it.
yeah, right, or a flex, whatever, but with flex space. Should we take a vote, or I don't know?
Let's take a vote.
Okay, should we allow them, this is for yes, that we could say, yes, the committee's not thrilled on it, or we are thrilled on it, but we will allow you to explore this as a festival flex space pier. Yes,
Only for a limited time.
I'm sorry, there's
hold
people.
on, this is just the act, Marty.
You can't limit it, it's just the act.
It's just the act, so yes is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, it passes then, and we.
Leslie, in the attendee section,
I'm sorry, Janine?
there's people in the attendee section that want to speak. Let me know when to bring them over.
Oh, great, thank you so much.
Sure.
So flex space. And in our letter, as you know, we will say that it wasn't, it's not our first top option, our last, what's sports and wellness and food and beverage, what is that? I know those are.
Already, those are just the idea that probably, there's no scenario that I can imagine where there's not some way to buy some food
Right,
there.
exactly. Okay, so,
Those are additional ways to generate some incidental additional revenue.
and we'll put that in we'll include it in our language.
I was going to say something like that, Leslie. I think the festival space is going to come back to us because we're going to have to limit, if they're going to do it, not like the culture shed, we don't want it to be all the time. It's going to be less than 10% of the time or less than 5% of the time, something.
But we can't, Marty, this is, that's why it's important, because this is their revenue generating space, so this has to be looked at as the main.
It's operating 100%.
Yeah, it's operating 100%, full capacity, this is the revenue generating portion. So we can't say, sure, use the flex space, but only use it for 4 weekends out of, you know what I mean? This is what they're looking for, right, as your revenue generating
Like,
space.
he's willing to consider for it, I mean,
Yeah.
in order to generate revenue, it has to have a reasonable amount of use.
Yes.
Like, I think limits could, but probably, they make it not
But
high,
it doesn't have to be 100% space.
right?
I don't agree that it should be even more than
But it has to
90.
be a
Marty, one way to look at this, there are two different uses that are permitted. There's park use and there's park/commercial use. And all we are doing is messing with the definition of park/commercial here.
I'm concerned that a festival space will close the pier. I don't mind a festival. It's a good idea, but I'm concerned that it closes the pier for too many days in the year. And that's
They're
one of
not
the things
allowed
that
to go into the park space, Marty. They're not allowed to do that. That's not allowed for commercial without, special
Permit.
dispensation from us.
So you're saying that if it were used as a festival space,
Yes.
And we already took a vote.
Yeah, let's take a vote.
Yeah, we did. We took the vote. We took, yeah, we took a vote, Marty, I was just commenting on your ask, if we could ask for limited, and I don't think we can do that at this point.
I don't want to hold up the conversation. We got to move on.
Yes, yes,
We have
it's already in,
members of the public.
it's already in there.
Gotta get it there.
Yes, we have one more thing is tourist destination. Whatever that is,
Bungee jumping, New York Eye.
I did trapeze when it was there, it was awesome, just saying.
How do you limit that? Because Central Park's grass, right? I mean, everything's a tourist destination. How do we?
The intent with Central Park is to be for the people. It's an urban jewel. Meant to create parks.
I think what they mean is a revenue generating space. Meaning like it's like someone comes and pays to go to the aquarium.
There's
I
a
don't know.
definition of like amusements and entertainment, that is not, is currently prohibited under the act, that would probably need to be changed.
In the Matrix, we called it iconic tourist attraction, so not like an incidental one, but like as
Like an aquarium or an environmental, I don't know, museum. Environmental museum, which probably would make no money. I don't, but I mean,
Museums don't make money.
museums don't make money. So let's vote on that real quick. Are we all for the exploration of a tourist?
Pay $1.
A tourist destination spot. Everyone who is in favor of the explosion for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, who is not in favor of a tourist destination? Any abstentions? Great, okay, that passes.
Leslie, could I ask one other?
Yes, please.
Specific thing that we talked about the last time?
Yes.
The idea of possibly being able to reconfigure the shape of the pier to make a wider zone or whatever.
Yep.
You've referred to it a couple of times, but that is another thing that would need an explicit Hudson River Park Act change if you are open to considering that.
Hold on, Janine, before we get to the public, can you there is a slide I sent you, there's actually two. One says open space, test fits, pier reshaping. And there's also another one, if you have, you can do that one too. Previously discussed test fit scenarios, test fit 1, test fit 2, test fit 3. Is that what you guys were talking about?
That's.
Oh, yeah, this is it. So this is what I'm talking about.
But let me know when you want me.
No, I think this would suffice. So I think, what Maureen is, and thank you for reminding me. This would actually, I can't see that we would prohibit, this is if we wanna put more pilot, move it out a little bit, or if there is a commercial interest that says, you know what, we wanna go there, but we wanna move it out this much and we'll pay for whatever.
Or they, well, so
Or no.
we're not talking about expanding the overall size of the pier. We're talking about being able to redistribute pieces, which might have the benefit of making better park space and concentrating on commercial use.
Could it be expanding the size of the pier if someone wanted to?
I think that would be difficult with environmentally, with like Department of Environmental Conservation. I don't think.
Would not.
I think they would not like us if we suggested that.
So how do we feel about reformatting the size or not the size? Okay, is there anything we missed? I think we hit all of.
Thank you.
Good, okay, let's bring the public over. Do you mind guys staying if the public has any?
Sure.
Okay, Janine, you go ahead. I'm sure I can see. Well, I guess I can actually, but I don't want to click on it because then I don't want everyone to see it on YouTube.
Which one do you want me to share?
No, go ahead. And then I think there's some sort of, oh, there we go. Yeah, bring over, whoever has raised their hands.
All right, Alexa.
So while the people are coming over, I just wanna reiterate, we're okay with office. We're okay with tourist destination, we're okay with Blue Highway. And then to lesser extents, hotel and flex event space.
And we're adding the environmental.
And we're adding the environment. Right.
I had a note in my notes. Do we talk about gateway money?
Gateway money?
I asked about it last month.
Yeah.
You already have something.
So, briefly, we already negotiated for approximately $8.5 million for the permanent easement. That is below a section of the park, and that's probably the money we're going to be using to do some pretty short, like near term. Improvements on the frontage of Pier 76 where the bulkhead is sagging. So that's a pretty pricey repair that we're looking at there, probably $5 to $6 million. That money that we just got from Gateway is probably gonna be the source for fixing that up. We will have some rental, of the park income from, Gateway as well for the, like, use of it as construction site. We haven't negotiated that yet. But that, you know, certainly is another thing that.
The only reason I bring it up is, you know, we talk Blue Highway, now we're talking transportation, now we're talking the true gateway. And maybe that needs to be discussed. You know, another way of getting a lot more money. And if that allows us to really expand the pier gateway and have more park, then I'm just saying. I think that should be explored.
Was it talking about task force?
So I think Gateway and the way that the base funding is structured between New Jersey, New York and federal government. Like, they have a very defined program and they're already, for their EIS, that is a very tightly defined piece of it. I do think that there, particularly for some of the Blue Highway and transportation, there may be other federal transportation funds that could support something like that. I don't think it would be connected with Gateway. They are very defensive.
I don't think we should explore it, it should be on that list, because, you know, our Senator Schumer is the most powerful guy, and he's writing this, so. You know, he came to us before the holidays, right, and he went through what he was doing, and how much money he was getting us. And I just think, you know, we should talk to his office.
What is Gateway? Sorry.
It's the money that they're reusing to do, like, the tunnel infrastructure and coming through.
The Amtrak tunnels.
The new line. And it's going right underneath the park, and that's how they're getting some of that money now. And I get what you're saying, that money should not pass, but I just think we should be part of maybe this statement saying we'd like to explore federal dollars for transportation.
What is?
I mean, I think on our funding, we have the federal.
I mean, transportation, a drone center with a delivery center, it's all I'm trying to say is, if we can get a bunch of money to help fix the piers, I think it's technology in the future.
So you're suggesting it as another possible use, the idea of some kind of transportation related revenue generating use on.
That's right, and since there's federal funds to build it, then we save a lot of money for the infrastructure.
But this is on the.
Would be there.
It would be a change then to the zoning, right?
There's no zoning on.
No, but that's what he's asking, then it would have to be a change for the zoning for that pier.
The act, yeah.
For certain things, probably, like, and certainly.
I don't think that they're all the answers now, but I'm just saying, if we are putting up what we think we can get behind, I don't know if that's something to explore, because the money's the biggest one. And if they get more money from the feds, we get more park.
Like, we do have, up like Pier 97, we're using some federal funding, to build, part of the Esplanade, up that is just north of 97, right? We're using some federal funds for transportation funds for that we were able to get because it's part of the marginal road.
And the area back to 57, a little while, was transportation money too, but
I mean, I just think we have some great legislators that know how to
they do.
go through that.
It is
And
certainly.
he's brilliant at it.
They do.
And I, you know, I would love to run a Sunday press conference that he always does. You know, hey, I've got some money for the west side. I just think we should leave it there. You know, when they built the Berkshire building, right? I mean, they were planning the land blimps on the top for delivery at the time. I mean, we need to be thinking.
Isn't it pointy?
No, but at the time it was, you know, where they thought that's where things were gonna land, they thought the infrastructure was going.
No one got it? Okay, put that up.
Only humanity.
You're the last one. What? Yeah, I know. Oh,
But we
don't
are
worry.
missing
Still
out
go.
on, you know, the transportation is going to change, and they're gonna be drones. And that could be a site where the quiet batteries are coming in, it's almost like a mini airport.
So
and
why don't
now
we
got big
incorporate-
infrastructure
We
and
can
a mess.
incorporate that in the letter as, to explore that use and see if,
Yeah.
because that change of the act might cover,
Yeah.
the other changes of the act would cover that anyway. It's not like a specific,
Yeah.
or it might be, I don't know.
It's sort of linked to the Blue Highway concept.
Yes,
That's
so-
what I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
Pull down that road.
Yeah.
Right, but there is a provision in the act that prohibits any facility for motorized aircraft.
This is why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah,
He's saying.
And I brought it up now for 10 years.
I know,
Okay,
you say Vermon's not headaches.
no, but we're missing out. It's
I
like
think
saying,
it's worth
I'm not
mentioning.
going to a car, I want to keep my horse.
Right.
I just want to be real careful if we're changing that provision, because that could unintentionally allow the heliport to stay.
Well, it is staying,
Not that you
but
know.
if the use has changed.
All right, we can, I think this is an off, like, we can definitely massage the language at Brad, and Lowell, may I put you in charge of this letter to work with me on it?
Sure.
Okay, or you could just do it yourself. No.
Leslie, you did mention, you should look on the lesser with the flags.
Hold on, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, I know we have someone, guys, hold on, we have someone in the public, Alexa,
Alexa and Elizabeth I brought over.
sorry?
Alexa and Elizabeth were brought over.
Oh, good, okay, can either of you hear me? Alexa?
Yes,
Oh, hi, is this for Pier, go ahead.
I thought there was a topic today about NYCHA, because I heard it mentioned earlier.
Yes, so the topic on NYCHA will be after this one, and what that is specifically is this committee is going to comment on or brainstorm on environmental and open park space recommendations for the new development plans.
Oh, they're talking about the HPD, whatever, EIS, whatever.
Yes, yeah, a section of it, a small section of it.
You may just want to remind her that next week is a housing meeting on this topic, so if she wanted to join that meeting.
Yeah, do you know when that is?
It is Thursday, yes, Thursday.
So Thursday at 6:30, 6:30 on Thursday, Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
There will be our housing committee. I don't know if you have a pen and paper, but it's 6:30 on Thursday.
I'll look at the calendar. Yeah.
Perfect, because our housing, our housing committee will take this up as well, which I think will go into a little bit more depth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Stephanie?
We don't see her.
Yeah, we don't see her. She might be put, she might be put over to you said, but we don't see her on our,
Yeah, it's Elizabeth.
oh, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Just addressing what President Doyle had said about the long haul perspective, I just want to introduce the idea about the design flood elevation, which has been touched on a little bit, but I wonder if the act needs to be changed to address the climate design resiliency guidelines that demand that we build up. If if FAR is 2, how is it going to be addressed? If the design flood elevation is about 17 feet from what I can calculate, and that doesn't count for wave surge. So, how does the act kind of accommodate the changes that we need to make based on the resiliency guidelines?
Noreen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so that's primarily done when we respond to zoning, which we are also subject to for the commercial use aspect of this. So we have elevated certain other piers in the park, and we are currently planning, for example, a small river research and education center in Tribeca, and are designing it in a way that has to meet the very complicated flood elevations that you're talking about there. While also meeting ADA requirements for access and the ability to have water drain from the highway, which is another thing that we always have to work around. So essentially, the act does not need to be changed, to my knowledge, in order to build at the elevation that would anticipate future flooding. And to be sure, we would be anticipating future flooding when we rebuild Pier 76 for whatever use, including the park use. But so it's an excellent question, but it's one that I don't think needs an act change at this time.
Okay, I appreciate that. I am glad that it was the Army Corps of Engineers HATS plan was mentioned. I just want to reiterate, since I have the floor, that That plan that they're considering going with is the Alt 3B plan, and that has no mitigations north of West 34th Street. So this Pier 76 can actually be a major element in protecting Hell's Kitchen, which is now in the overflow zone. So I feel like we need to focus on elevating that element of considerations. And I do hope you go with the tourist destination idea, and especially ecotourism and perhaps seaweed production. And remember last month it was introduced that we could potentially have food production on that site. I really hope that that is maintained throughout our conversation, because we have to have micro local food production in all aspects of planning going forward, if we're going to really take care of our people.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. Janine, is there anyone else? That's it, okay. So, let's just take a general vote. If someone else, I can't make a motion, but if someone else can make a motion, summarizing what we just said, and then we'll continue. Roberta, go for it.
I would like to make a motion to draft a letter from this committee, doing a number of things. One, memorializing the various points of discussion we had here, indicating that we would be open to a set of uses, indicating that there are some uses that are more preferable than others, and adopting the statement of principles as a committee, as a guiding document for development moving forward.
With some of those edits.
With the edits, of course.
With the addition. Any second, Matt? The two task force people coming up. Everyone, all in favor? All opposed? Present, not eligible, abstaining? Okay, great. We have ourselves a letter for you guys.
So I know you have a huge agenda in front of you. I just want to say again, I think we're just so grateful for you giving us the trust to consider changing a state law, which is a big deal, and our commitment to trying to keep working with you to make sure we get it right. So
I'm glad you said that, and we appreciate it. And I think I speak for this committee, that I believe why in CB4, as you guys know, they're pretty strong-willed. We're pretty strong-willed, and we like to have a lot of parameters. And I think a lot of the reason is why we're doing this or giving you that is because I think there is a trust with working with you guys that we hope will continue as we develop this, that even though the act may change, and we'll give you allowances, that you would still come to us on a frequent basis, and
when you save your letter, we'll say that.
And yeah, exactly. Lowell mentioned it's a wrap.
Provision, if everyone's okay with it, it's all this only applies to Marine next.
Exactly. Thank you, guys. No, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then it can be wrong.
We hope the rest of your long agenda is okay.
All right, so, Janine, thank you for putting up those slides.
You're welcome.
So guys, I think though Bye guys.
Hi.
I think though the next two are pretty meaty. I actually don't think it's going to be as long as that, and I'll explain why. Let's go with the NYCHA draft scope of work. So this NYCHA scope of work, as Jessica said, this is more, let's put everything out there that we think we would like, and let them investigate, let them look at it, let them research it. This is really anything and everything we think should be incorporated in the new NYCHA developments. And however way that works out is none of our, this is whatever the new build is gonna be and whatever that looks like, as it relates to environment, sanitation to a certain extent, and open spaces. And this is more like, let's get a list, because what happens is we're not gonna write a letter, but we are gonna write like an inter-office memo to land use, saying this is what we would like you to incorporate in your letter. Cause they're gonna have the transportation people, they're gonna have everyone, kind of like the City of Yes letter. It's gonna have a lot of, go ahead.
Just confirming that and so for my understanding, what we have is a draft scope of work for the draft environmental impact statement. And so we're just asking what they should study. And, you know, any questions that they may have left out from here. And that's the focus of this letter, just to.
Yes and no. So yes, mostly yes. But I was talking with Jessica, and even like little things like, you know, Sally, you were mentioning, and I remember a few months back, trash compactors. How come big buildings, you know, shouldn't have trash? That's something that we should include, like, you should look into not having the trash on the street side, you know, all these new buildings should have big compactors that keep the trash, you know, in a holding center or whatever. Things like that, which it's requests like that, Katie.
Do we know how many units potentially this building would have? Because there is a rule already with the commercial waste zone law, that buildings of 150 units or more have to submit a sanitation plan. So that would
definitely be more than.
It's much more than 100.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So by law, they're gonna have to submit a sanitation plan.
They're gonna have to, not only that, this is just like the beginning of what you want. There's gonna be there's gonna be an environmental plan, there's gonna be a transportation plan, there'll be a sanitation plan, there's going to be many, I think.
Containerized for trash? No?
NYCHA usually gets picked up by roll-off containers. So the big dumpsters, a truck comes, takes it, empties it and brings it back. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, and it's open air.
Yeah, it's all external, nothing's inside.
Yeah, so Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so in terms of environmental considerations, I think that we would like to see.
I'm writing, go.
The base LEED platinum for the development of these buildings.
I'm sorry, what?
The LEED platinum status for these buildings in terms of energy efficiency.
Yeah. I was gonna go one step further, actually. Well, go ahead, well.
Yeah, additionally, materials used need to avoid bird strike, migratory bird strike.
You're talking about the windows.
Yes. And then number 3 on my very long list, I won't go, I'll just go 3. We're gonna be losing green space. Section 9 housing, originally was built to include green space and common space. These are gonna be super blocks. We're losing trees, we're losing park space. So I like to see the restoration of green spaces lost from the demolition process.
Green roof.
On street level and within the buildings.
Let me put that, street.
And I would just add, to Chris's point, the loss of green spaces, I mean, it's so important for stormwater flood mitigation, so it's not just a matter of the way it looks or because we want the green spaces, it's actually really important for the environment. That's what those campuses, the beauty of those campuses, even though the buildings are unsightly, that they were specific areas that really helped with that, absorbing water, the mature trees, and we're losing all that now. So how are they going to
Restore green canopy.
restore that? And I, would strongly advocate that they do.
All the alleyways have trees.
And also, before we get into everyone's list, I do wanna say, I think since this is not gonna be a letter that's gonna be voted on in full board, at least coming out of us. If there's anything you guys missed, or like you said, you have a list, send it to me. We really should not mind giving land use a full, long list.
Yeah.
And then let them tease it out as far as how they want to incorporate it.
I would not use that the old buildings are unsightly because it's, some people on this committee came from those buildings.
I didn't mean it that way, Chris. It's not their fault, but the way that they treated those buildings over the years,
Yes.
that's what's happened.
Federal neglect.
So I certainly meant no disrespect for anyone. So
No, I don't think
please
anyone
take
took it that way.
I did. My family came from the projects.
Right. Listen,
I know, I appreciate that.
okay, yeah, but you don't need to go there. I mean, that's totally unnecessary.
Sally.
So there have been a lot of letters from this committee, so I don't know, I'm not exactly clear what we're doing with difference. For example, I really don't want to see the tall buildings on 9th Avenue. I want them further west. Is
that's
that
not-
covered already?
No, so that, we're not really talking about how they're being built. This is more the environmental and open park space. I mean, if you wanna go to land use and tell them that, then.
Well, we've written letters like that. I mean, that's been a contentious point for a long time. So I'm just trying to clarify what we're stating here versus what's already been stated. Nobody wants those tall buildings on Ninth Avenue. That doesn't mean that they're not, hopefully that will be considered. Everything that we're discussing today, I imagine, is not things that have previously been discussed.
I think some have been previously discussed through other, like you brought up permeable pavements before. I think that should be on the list of all of the new pavements that are, going in, and think like you brought up compactors before, that should go on the list. So I think
You're remembering everything.
I think like everything, this is kind of like for environmental people like us, this is like a candy store, right? It's like, kind of like, what do we want? I mean, like, I'll give you an example. I won't go through my whole list. I'll get to Katie and then there was someone else and Matt. Like, none of these should be oil or gas powered, though they could be. It should all be everything should be electric going in, I mean, things like that. I think 2027, I think.
Local law 154 specifically.
Yeah, I think it's not the date yet, but I think by the time.
It'll be, yeah,
It will be by the time they start the buildings, exactly, by the time they start the buildings, it will be, but it's not yet enacted, it has to trigger.
Yeah.
Is it 2027?
The state senate.
I thought
So
it was
local
20
law one, it encompasses all affordable buildings. I don't, by 2027. The phase in, I believe, starts 2025. Local law 154, and then you have a phase in for the All Electric Buildings Act at the state level. But I believe, local law 154 is slightly more aggressive.
I'm glad we have a housing person then. Yeah, so Katie and then Matt and.
So, looking at, again, thinking that this is gonna take a long time to build, when they are doing their, trash infrastructure for each level. I know NYCHA famously does not have capacity for, recycling. Residents have to take their recycling out and put it somewhere
I have
else.
the chutes, you mean?
Yes, and not only chutes for recycling, but they also need to have chutes for composting, because this is gonna happen when composting is mandatory.
Are you looking at them?
Yeah.
It's your thing, I know, I'm kidding. Anything, go ahead, keep going, that's it?
Yeah.
That's it?
I've never put in a composting chute, because we had to do the recyclable ones in buildings. I wonder what that would look like. I'm just curious.
And what it would smell like.
I mean, if it's gonna be through DSNY curbside, it doesn't have to go in loose. It should go in a bag and then it's collected in bags.
So another chute line coming down.
There should be 3 or 4
Yeah.
chute lines.
I mean, I've been to buildings in Toronto that it is one chute and you pick a thing and it diverts it to a specific.
Red, green.
Yeah, yeah.
I've done the red and green, I've never added the other one, so it's interesting, I like that.
Now.
This was also brought up at full board last night. So many years ago at the Chelsea Elliott houses, they did do infill to build an affordable housing mixed use building. And parking was part of that agreement. So they did build, I think, like 24, well, there's an indoor underground garage with like 24 spaces. Anyway, they have to maintain that parking, whatever this new development is. I would just say we should encourage or prioritize EV charging in these parking spaces. So I just want to make sure that that's in there as well.
Then Sally.
I don't know if this is even appropriate for the EIS, but they're in a flood zone. They're zone A, right, at least in Hudson, so. I don't know what the mitigation is for that, but it must go beyond permeable sidewalks.
Yeah, it'll ask, or in the draft EIS, it should answer that question. It talks in this particular scope about how much is in the floodplain and what, incidents of 100-year flooding there is, and I think we should absolutely make inquiry on that.
Okay. Let's say, Sally, then Allison.
So since you've been so kind to remember all my stuff, I'm gonna bring up Brad's. All the public space lighting should be LED.
Solar.
Sorry about that. Solar,
That's from renewable,
right.
renewable. Windmills, solar, the whole kit and caboodle that we always bring up.
Right, that's correct.
Renewable energies.
I mean, they've got the turbine now, stormwater, all of that. Windmill.
Alice, then
turbine.
Josephine.
In light of all the recent fires on the bikes, can we request a bike charging station outside free and secure, so no one's charging them inside their apartment?
So I have here on my list that all buildings should have indoor bike parking. I think we can add that to
With
the,
charging.
We're charging.
for charging, we can have the.
But then it would also need to have fire suppression protection.
Yeah,
Like
it's gonna have to have all the safeguards.
They're gonna have sprinklers already.
And not just,
Sprinklers enough isn't gonna put out a lithium ion battery fire.
not just e-bikes, but I mean, regular bike parking too. They should have indoor bike parking, that would be, so bike charging and like. Anything else or no?
Yes.
Josephine, Roberta. Oh, Marty, I'm sorry, Josephine, Roberta, then Marty. Is that okay, Marty? Go ahead, Josephine.
So some of this will overlap with ACES, but the environmental impact on everyone's health, right? The people who, the residents who are supposedly still going to be living there, we're not sure about that yet. There's a school. PS33 is adjacent to one of the buildings coming down. It's literally next to the playground. And what is gonna happen when is construction taking place? The noise level, how are these kids gonna learn? Air, the quality of the air, they're breathing dust all day long. What is basically happening? One of our asks is actually, potentially having a new school come out of this to replace the PS33, which is in very bad condition. So, but basically, I'd like to have it on both committees in both areas. What is the health impact? The long term, this is 17, 20 years, the long term health impact on growing children and the residents who are living there.
Write it down. Definitely, Roberta.
So this is a bit specific, but on the section on energy, it indicates that it will basically project the amount of energy consumption during operation based on average and annual whole building energy use rates for New York City. But these will almost certainly be all electric buildings and will be built to a very high code standards. And given that the average age of New York City buildings is over 60 years old, I anticipate that the energy use may wind up being different. I do not know if there is a way in the DAIS to ultimately anticipate that, but if there is, I think it would be a mistake to, use our existing or extrapolate from our existing standards if we believe that the emissions from these buildings is ultimately going to be lower. And so I would, if we can ask them to study that, I actually think that would be really additive or informative to
So study what I'm sorry, say it.
the projected energy use from the all electric buildings that are built to,
Is that what their A category now is?
there isn't,
There's when they inspect, they give them all a letter grade, and
Yes.
only brand new buildings get it, for the most part, get an A.
so it could be that, but
All the
I
other
could be
buildings are C's and
misreading.
D's.
I could be misreading this, but I don't think that I am, and even if I am, I think it's worthwhile trying to get an actual picture of the projected energy use here. I would be really interested in ensuring that whatever energy use projections are included here include, modern building codes, and when I say modern, I mean 2024 building codes, and reflect a development site that's going to, by nature, be all electric.
I mean, future sited building codes even.
It could, I don't know if they're able to do that in a DIS, or an EIS, but that would be one. And then this is a qualm that I kind of have with the overall NEPA process, so I'm curious if they would be willing to sort of study it, and if it is possible to effectively inquire what is the cost of, or the environmental cost in the terms of carbon emissions of not including additional housing here. I think that all of these concerns are worthwhile, but we have a lot of evidence to support the idea that dense multifamily housing lowers the per person carbon emissions from individuals who wind up living there. And if they do not have the opportunity to live there, that, even the surrounding suburbs or moving out further out into the outer boroughs, individuals have higher individual carbon usage. So I am curious if a draft environmental impact statement could ultimately attempt to answer that particular question.
So the environmental costs in terms of carbon emissions for the
Of
ultra
not-
high density.
Yes,
living.
of not creating these buildings.
Oh, I see.
On a per person.
So the
basis?
negative.
You could say on a per person basis.
The carbon footprint on a per person basis. Has that ever been studied like that?
It has been studied informally, but not as part of the NEPA process.
Anyone else? I mean, we can also go through it. I would also put
I have
down
one.
connectivity. Oh, I'm sorry, Marty, I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
My shtick is, as part of, Chelsea land use, I was asked to read sewer and water. And, the indication is that water is not going to be a problem, even though it's going to use substantially more water than the previous, buildings. But it's still a small part of the amount of water that the city uses. So they dismiss it because it's a small part of what the city uses. I want to know about the water conservation methods that are used, that are being implemented in the buildings to save, to use as little water as possible and to reuse whatever kind of rainwater that may be landing on the building. That's water. Sewer, they say they're going to examine the impact of sewer, but they're close enough to the river. They don't talk at all about separating stormwater from sewer and beginning the process of the separation of stormwater from sewer. If they're going to spend money on building these buildings, they should be putting a pipe into the river that's going to channel the stormwater away from the sewage. That's not part of this EIS. It should be.
I mean, it could definitely be mentioned though.
That's right. I wrote a note to the chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee, and it's in the Dropbox. If you want to see what I wrote, you might take a look, and maybe include some of it in the note you're writing.
Okay, got it. I was also thinking, it's going to be, I call it a campus, I guess, campus a little bit. I think there should be connectivity through the campus. Pedestrian oriented designs priority within the campus. We can speak like to broader things like that of how we want some sort of design process, because I don't have to research that. But if anyone has any other suggestions, please don't think this is it.
The examinations of what are not warranted always bug me a little bit. They never go beyond in the EISs what's required by statute, and we're asking for more than just what's required by statute, especially as the environment is concerned. The energy stuff, the wind, solar, and that's not required in the EIS, but I think we should be pushing for all of these things. The whole list of stuff that folks just said.
Listen, I don't think it hurts. You put it on the list and then they respond and then we can go from there.
And water and sewer, does that take it out to Maine? I mean, do we know that there would be no older lead pipes involved at all with water coming into the building?
No,
not in NYCHA, but you mean in New
Well,
York?
the main, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing.
I mean, they're gonna replace all the pipes in the buildings, so
Yeah.
that'd all be new, but what, from the source to the building, those are all old.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you were here, but actually, someone from, Brad Lander's office came and there is, I'll get it for you. You can actually look and I think it might be I don't know if it was the.
Shows you where every lead pipe is.
Yeah.
All the, I don't know if it was lead pipes in the building or that led to the building. Do you remember it was highlighted red? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Definitely in the building.
It was in the building. I don't know if it was led to the building.
But
But there was a
there's
mechanism.
whole infrastructure to go from the mains to the, which they've replaced in the avenues, but to the buildings.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I
if that's
imagine
in
they're
the
really
working.
old and have not been touched.
Is anyone here on land use? Chelsea land use?
I am.
Hello.
There haven't been more land use meeting in a while.
Okay, great. Good job. Excellent. Thanks for your participation. Marty, have they talked about, the scope of work as far as pipes? Do you remember that, or that might be coming up in the next?
No, I haven't heard it.
Alright, thanks. We were just teasing Lowell a bit.
And it's not, it's not in the draft scope of work document, which is 68 pages that you can enjoy reading.
Okay.
Leslie,
But you
Mike,
shouldn't waste your time.
Leslie, Mike Noble is on the attendees and he's also on Clue. I'll bring him over.
Mike is?
Mike Noble?
Oh, yeah, bring him over. So, like I said, please don't feel free to email me or text whatever, and I'll put it in. I don't even think we have to vote necessarily. I mean, I think we kind of know what our general list is, and if anyone has anything, I will add some broader language, you know, what broadly to look at as far as environmental impact of this project. But I think specifics are important too.
So that blue is one real.
Mike, hi, Mike, can you hear me?
Let me see if I can do that.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm sure, I'm happy you guys are looking at this EIS as well. Just for I assume you've looked at the document that Marty referenced. The floodplain business starts on page 38. The water and sewer stuff is on page 52, right? Marty's doing water and sewer. I'm doing hazardous materials and something else. But my concern is also about PS 33. And one of the things that bothers me is that, you know, the kids are going to be subjected to a lot of air pollution during the deconstruction of that building, you know, which happens to be across the street from Chelsea Park, as you well know, right? So you got Chelsea Park on the north and you've got PS 33 on the east. As they tear this building down, the dust and everything else, and they should be doing, you know, maybe hourly air quality assessments, right? Maybe by the hour. I don't know what the protocol is, but I would, you know, hope they do that. Another thing, you know, we've had cases of Legionnaire's disease in housing projects, including here. I myself caught it 5 years ago, and I can tell you Legionnaire's disease is not fun. Somebody was just revealed died a year ago in one of the projects. And I can tell you, if they don't take care when they take that water tank down, you know, other people, if that bacteria happens to be in the water tank at this point, people are going to get sick. And you're exposing a lot more people to it than if it were just sitting there and people were turning their faucets on. Now you've got the entire structure.
Mike, do you suggest something we can add in language to land use about that?
Oh yeah, well that's what I'm going. Those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about. You know, so but when you guys do when you guys do your thing about the parks, I encourage you to, you know, look at the plan and be specific in terms of square footage and all that other business, the number of trees and everything, because it's not going to make much impact unless you've done a detailed analysis of what exists now and what's proposed. If you look at the various presentations that Essence did, you're going to see a whole lot of open space, right?
Yeah.
I have lived.
Mike, we're gonna include that too, as far as open spaces and I think Brad said it, and we're always big proponents of green roofs, that we should talk about that.
On the roofs.
Yeah, on the roofs. So, and I
Yeah.
know you'll be at land use, but if you think of anything environmentally, I know you'll bring it up at land use, but you know my number. Let me know and I'll add it in writing just in case.
Yeah, that's a pending phone call. I look forward to you calling me at some point when you have some time.
Absolutely.
And because I've got a whole list, okay?
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right.
Okay, so we're, oh, Chris, you wanted to say?
Yeah, big picture.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike, for bringing up Chelsea Park, during the,
Construction phase?
deconstruction and
Yeah.
construction phase. We have to consider whether or not that park is going to be usable, because of air pollution. And so I would like to see, related and whatever the hell their subsidiary is, thank you. Provide permits elsewhere for the continued use of youth sports.
So it would almost be like, it's called, there's an acronym, ICRA, that we do with like hospitals, like when you're working to make sure the dust is migrating something. I know in a couple of the land use, when I think Manhattan West was going up because of this commercial or a residential area, they had to do certain things, certain ways. The netting had to be a certain way to keep the dust inside.
We don't even know if they're gonna use Chelsea Park as a staging area. We don't know what their staging plan is, right? We also don't know whether or not whether or not the ICRA standards is gonna keep, the milliparticles, to a point where that area is breathable. So I'm also looking for a contingency plan out of Essence and related to ensure that youth sports and community sports can continue. Additionally, we just okayed a dog park in Chelsea Park as well. What's going to happen there? Like, these are things that have to be considered now, because we put a lot of time, 2 years into that dog park, and there's been generations of use of that park. We need to put that in consideration now.
I would say the same also applies to the Chelsea Rec Center.
That's correct.
So are you saying that they should supplement the residents with Y passes and Chelsea Pier passes?
Look, Related has a share over at Equinox. I'm not asking for people to be given shares at Equinox, so the fun to have members of NYCHA finally get full restoration of the health that they've been denied. No, I'm talking about, when resident associations, when organizations that are currently utilizing those spaces deem it not suitable, that Essence and Related go out and find park permits relatively close in the Chelsea or Hell's Kitchen or, Greater Village area, and secure those spaces so those programs can continue.
I think we should definitely ask first, what is the plan? I don't even think they know yet, but if the Chelsea Park usable space during construction is interesting. Anything else? And then we can.
And alternatives, if it's not.
Alternatives not, yep. Anything else, guys, to put on the list? Like I said, this is we have until, when does land use meet?
20th.
Okay, you have till the 20th.
Leslie, you've got shadows as well to consider on the park. Shadows.
Sorry, Mike?
I say shadows as well will impact the park.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Bert Lazarin is doing that part for land use, by the way. But shadows is a big thing. I think it's good it's on the north side, so maybe it's not so bad after all. But it's 39 stories, So facing the park. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Brad.
I know they were going to talk about the current quality of life and fixing of the residents while they're there now. And shall we bring up that environmental impact of the mold and that even before they start construction and the repair of these units while they're figuring this out? They're committed to doing that, so maybe we should say something related to the environmental impact, how imperative this happens for the residents while they're waiting for this new development.
Specifically to mold or the environmental impact?
Well, right now, they all complain about, they gotta fix the mold in my apartment, the radiator leaks, the air quality's bad, it's not clean. Security's environmental.
So you're saying that they should clean all this stuff up while they're doing?
Well, right now, they're committed to spending quite a lot of money in the existing units before everything starts. So maybe we should state something in the environmental vein, how important it is that that gets done, so they don't continue to suffer while they're waiting for the larger development.
And it's almost like then why demo, because then they're fixing the problem.
So they're
No,
studying the no action alternative,
Yeah.
which would encompass what Brad is describing. It might be appropriate to ask about the impacts to, it could be, you have air quality in here and other effects on resident health, and public health is included there. and seeing if they can incorporate that into alternative one of the EIS.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that because I'm saying the work that they're doing in the temporary repair area. Not the study, because that would be part of the study. I'm saying in the temporary area of repair, the environmental impact is big, and that's why we want this.
So consider the environmental impact of the temporary repairs, which is to clean the existing units while waiting for new units.
That's right.
Okay.
Get things up and running and clean, so.
Yeah, they
consider
have,
the
they
environmental
made a
impact.
financial commitment to continue to improve apartment
Exactly.
conditions throughout this.
Right.
Okay, definitely.
It's like 100 million, I can't remember.
It's quite a lot.
It's a lot of money. Well,
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Are we okay with this list for now? And like I said,
Yes.
keep saying. You think of something else?
Yeah, Dingy Dogs on there.
Good. All right. Marty, you okay with this list?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, except I don't, security was supposed to start on February 1st and it didn't. I don't know if it started yet. So we are asking for things. I guess I'm just being a pessimist.
Yeah, listen, security, I can tell you it has not started, my friend.
It was supposed to have started February 1st, as I understand it.
Yeah, well, no, there are a lot of things in abeyance here, I must tell you.
Well, that's
good.
not good.
No,
And
it's not
that
good.
doesn't bode well for the requests that we're making in this letter.
Yeah, well, I'm living it, Marty.
Marty, we'll talk about that to include in the letter, okay?
Say that
Or
again.
in the, I shouldn't say the letter, I should
Please.
say the, list. We'll talk about that, as far as how we frame the list to handle land use. It's worth a mention.
Let's go.
Okay, let's go. I do want to make one more mention of that. So Gregory Morris, Greg is, on land use, on Chelsea land use, and his, I guess his little nugget, of information, contribution to this is, he is handling air quality, greenhouse gas emission and climate change. So I'll talk to him as well and, kind of put our heads together, seeing what he found out, and it could be incorporated. Okay, great. So let's move on. Last topic. Janine, if you can, there is a slide. Remember it's the slide that I took as a screen grab from the Port Authority meeting the other night?
This is a what, 1,000-page document that we're talking about that was put on our website, what, yesterday or the day before, or 4 days ago, something like that. It is laden with legalese, and I spent some time at Leslie's encouragement reading this afternoon the section on air, and I was really dumbfounded by it. The main takeaway that I have, I still want to see the slide that Janine's going to put up. I was dumbfounded by the focus on the new terminal being naturally ventilated. That's a quote. So that they were talking about putting vents with some sort of covering over it all around the building to cause an even airflow to go through the building. And I thought to myself, what the hell, you're building a new terminal. Why aren't you building an enclosed terminal that takes the diesel that is emitted by the buses that come into it and scrubs it so it doesn't send it into our neighborhood? A lot of the text says things like it compares it to New York City in general and doesn't compare the emissions to our neighborhood in specific, and that struck me as shortchanging us and putting the bus pollution in our air. Now they're going to say in 2040, when the end of the building is to occur, it'll be a mostly electric fleet. but I'm worried about the time between now and then, and they need to be taking care of the air emissions that occur between now and then, and why it's not enclosed, I don't get. More specifics about what I read, I think, are irrelevant in comparison to what I just said.
So Marty's being kind, the encouragement of me, it was more of a threat. I said, you better read this.
I spent my whole afternoon on, I spent my whole afternoon on this, Leslie. I mean, really, thanks a lot,
Sorry,
girl.
I know. But I do want to say, before we go into some comments on this, I think we're going to approach this the exact same way as we approached it, not the exact same way, but similar to the way we approached the NYCHA conversation. This is also going to land use. So we're going to give them our recommendations, our concerns on this document, and they will incorporate it into a bigger document. So again, we are not writing a separate letter. We will be adding our 2 cents to their letter as far as the environment and public space goes. I'm sorry about this slide. The Port Authority did not give us, they won't give us the slide presentation, or they did not give us the slide presentation. So this is a screenshot I actually took from the live stream the other day. And you know what, I'm gonna, just so I can show you what this is, just to give everyone just a little bit of view. This is, these are the terminals, the bus area. This is the main terminal. If you see these light blue guys, those are the new commercial buildings that's gonna be part of the revenue generating piece of this that's going to be built there. And these are the ramps, the entry and exit ramps. Now, I don't know, Marty, what you said, but I believe these two, I could be wrong, but because Marty said that it's something different. These two are fully enclosed, or supposed to be. The terminal and then this are fully enclosed. The ramps, we didn't know, it was unclear if that was fully enclosed. But Marty, you might.
I don't think either the building or the ramps are fully enclosed. They have vents on the side to permit air to flow through. There was a tremendous amount of conversation about the naturally ventilated buildings. So they may be fully enclosed, but they're not fully contained.
Can I just read from the executive summary? Natural ventilation from the permeable facades of the new main terminal, the SSF, and the associated ramp structures of the replacement facility. So it sounds like all of them have permeable facades, and then the ramp has the ventilation. So they all have some form of natural ventilation is what this sounds like.
Yeah, and we will get to that specifically, but before I sit down, see these two? These are going to be the new, those are the green spaces. What they're going to be, is it just gonna be a green space? Is it gonna be something else? We don't know, but those are the open, public spaces that will be developed as part of this, that we will comment on too. They are, let me see, hold on.
That's the Dyer Avenue cover that they're going to remove to make that area quote unquote permeable, as opposed to runoff by the deck that they'll be eventually removing.
So those are the deck overs. So I guess this is a little different than NYCHA, because NYCHA, like, kind of wish we started from scratch. We can just throw everything against the wall. This is more like we're commenting specifically on this and what they have presented to us. So I don't know. Listen, I know it just came out. It's hard. I don't know, but if anyone has any thoughts on it, I want to incorporate it, and I can go over my list, what I was thinking of from what I read, and then you guys can tell me what you think. Brad, go ahead, and then Matt.
I know you brought up the buses, Marty. I know I've talked to the transportation for many years, and we were told, don't push the electrical buses on them because we're gonna lose something else. And I remember fighting that. I could not understand that. We don't need to wait to 2040. We could demand something before that. Second thing, affordable housing could go on top, just like in Washington Heights over the GW. What are we doing here? We've got a massive amount of space owned by the city that could have affordable housing above it and senior housing. It's ridiculous that we're missing out on this. I know I've said this in the past. And if anything, those should be all parks on top.
So that's what I mean,
it's absolutely insane.
That's on the
list. They could
list.
still get their office building there, but we're really missing out.
Well, I don't know if we're, I mean, we can tell them we want, that's on the list as far as all the roof space. See, all roof space should now be green automatically from now on. I mean, it's not even.
But I'm talking about not just a green roof, I'm talking about usable park space.
Yeah. So it's, but I have this for, you're gonna love this, Brad. Janine, there is a slide. I believe it is, I sent it to you subsequently at 3:47. There's 2 slides. It is the San Francisco. Do you see, there are 2 slides?
No, they never did, they just keep out the different families. Yeah, for 100,000.
I don't know if you see it.
While she's getting that up for us, one of the things that struck me when I was reading the document is that they were talking about the national ambient air quality standards, and everything they were doing was to meet local, federal, or state standards. None of what they were doing was in any way exceeding those standards. And so they're not working at all to reduce the air emissions in our neighborhood. They're just saying that we're going to keep them the same.
Right. There's that, and then, there's another one too. So Brad, you might find this interesting. Guys, this is,
Can I get that larger by chance?
I'm sorry?
Can it get a little bit larger?
Yeah, there's another one that's larger than it's an aerial. So this is, SF, San Francisco Salesforce. It's on top of a public building. It's Trans Bay Joint Powers Authority, which I didn't really know until I was researching. But this is, a public building, a transportation building in San Francisco. And this is what they did with their roof. And not only is it a green roof, but it has an amphitheater, it has I mean, it's, as you can tell, multiple uses. If you looked at what we saw before, we have a huge footprint of roof, that could even be connected. I think it would even, it would challenge this as far as space. And I think if we don't demand something like this, we would be silly. It would, and
It's just the short sightedness of
Yeah.
how we are being, these poorly designed, shoved down our throat. Not thinking 50 years, 70 years down the road, example of poor policy.
Yeah, I agree.
And billions and billions of dollars, and then we're giving up our public land for it.
So is everyone okay if I include this in our?
And I think
land
it's
use?
that, and housing as well.
Okay, Roberta and Chris, do you have your hand up?
Yeah.
And, oh, sorry, Matt, you go, Matt first, sorry.
I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because I mean, my whole question was around open space and what that's gonna look like, and I just wanted to, and I haven't gone through the whole document.
If you
yet,
have,
right?
I would be very.
But I know, I mean, a few years ago, the Hell's Kitchen South community put together like their own
Yeah.
plan, and I think this board at the time endorsed or supported that plan, and I'm just wondering how much of this is reflective of what the open space was, because they had mapped out a whole
We're like 12 open
connectivity.
spots.
Just the capping of the pedestrian parks is pretty much the only thing.
So you know what I think is a good
Do we
idea?
continue to push?
Yeah,
and-
you know what's a
and
good
use
idea,
that?
before I do, why don't I go through my list, and then like what
Okay.
I have, and then you guys can then build on that, because I think I'm gonna hit a lot of what you have, so this, the public green space roof, like this, so if you saw, I'm sorry, Janine, to do this to you, can you put up that screen grab again? Of the, meeting?
Yeah.
I apologize. But yes, so there is, right now, it only, I think, goes to, there are 2 sections of green space. One goes from 37 to 38, and the other one goes from 38 to 39, and it ends at that South 37. What the plan you're talking about actually had, it went all the way down to 30.
Right.
We had the mini ones, that's
Yes,
triangle all the way down.
exactly. That was in my ask as well.
Okay.
And
Whatever.
it was called a green beltway.
Right.
Just so everyone knows, that's their land.
Right.
If they build it, it's not like they're taking over city,
Right.
that's their land. They can continue. I'm sorry, not that one, the
one in the
God's
guide.
Port Authority, yeah. It's not up there, but, I have it, I can.
Okay, yeah, I would
Yes.
just continue to bang this.
So I was gonna say that if that's your land, continue the green space, it's gonna be a green beltway, and that connects to, where that you guys would know better than I would maybe, but it connects to the plaza at Manhattan West, which then connects to the Highline. So if we do encourage that continuation,
Yeah.
you will get from that building all the way to the Highline, green, not even touching a road, just going a green
Yeah, I think we should
Beltway,
continue to advocate for that.
It's, yeah, absolutely.
So much work went into that,
Um,
and.
Yeah, so those are the two greens right there.
Yeah.
What Matt is saying is south of that, there are smaller plots that continue in a southwestern angle. And it's like little triangles. I think we continue to push for that because again, it's their land. It's not like they have to take up anyone else's. It's just that they decide yes or no.
This is not elevated, this is at the
So-
ground level?
It's ground level, but over streets. I had this problem too. I kept calling it elevated because you look down and that's the roadway. But so it's street level, but there is.
It's like the railway cuts.
It's
Yeah,
where the,
thank you.
yeah.
So I also want to advocate for, if it's okay with you guys. See where this ends? That's still depressed right here. We couldn't figure out why they didn't push it all the way over, why they cut it right there. That's still entry and entrance, for cars. So you look down and you see it. We thought, and I was talking to some land use people, that maybe they think they need this open for ventilation, but we don't want that air traffic ventilation.
Yeah.
It should be, someone said to me, and I'll use it, we want filtration, not ventilation. And I think that's important. And what Marty was saying with the closed buildings, and if everyone agrees, I can include that as well.
I'm looking at this image on the screen and I'm thinking about sewers again. I guess that tells you where my mind is going. It goes from 8th Avenue all the way, almost all the way over to the river. There's no reason they can't separate stormwater from sewage and build a pipe that goes along their property all the way to the river and into the river for stormwater.
It's gonna be expensive to enclose all of those and.
That's what they're going to say.
Well, that's why those two big buildings.
Yeah.
We don't give up on it, we push and see what we can get out of.
So, you know what, that's what they're gonna say about the extra park space too. This is a $10 billion project. I mean, they can spend, it's a 10 billion, just the magnitude of this. So to ask for a few more parks or
I
some.
just don't think we're bringing Schumer enough. He just needs the one getting the money. And I just don't think we use them enough.
Bless you. So I'm just gonna go through this quickly because I know people wanna go home. I also want to do indoor bike parking with, code locks, meaning like, you go, you don't need your own chains, you go, you use because people, we have to encourage that. We want people to go inside, use their bikes, park it, get one of those, like you do for a locker, a key, and then go on your way and then come back and get it. I think that should be in here, a big space for that. Permeable pavement, public EV fast charging stations with no paywalls, for private vehicles. Because that was I guess a contentious point between us and transportation, though we all agreed there should be EV chargers, no one wants them on the curb, where are we gonna put them? Why don't we have EVs where the people that live here can go, get their car charged and leave, and they're not outside.
They're still paying for the electricity, right?
Yes, you pay for the
Okay,
electricity, but you don't, but it's not a paywall.
Got it, yeah.
But like the electricity is like to fill up, it's like $15,
No,
it's
I
like
just want to
gas.
make sure that
Yes.
the public is not like just charging people's cars.
Right. No, you charge for the actual
That's
electricity, correct. A way to interconnect over those two green spaces, so we have, the continuation of the greenway, the green beltway, if you wanna call it, but separate from that, just that those two green spaces can be connected. I think, everything in this is what Brad said, should be electric or non-diesel, and we should ask for that. They said, someone asked them that, and the Port Authority said, well, we don't do that. That's not us. We don't mandate it. Well, you should.
We need all groups that are part of this.
Exactly.
Legislative to change it.
Exactly, correct,
I mean, we've got continuous prices coming.
correct.
That's what they're claiming. It's for environmental.
The ramps should be, we don't know. Some people think the ramps are, I don't know if the ramps are enclosed. I didn't see it. I haven't gotten through the
The
thing.
top level of the first presentation
It
that I
looked
had
open?
received, it was open.
Okay, ramps should be closed. I mean, I don't know.
And on the sides were ventilated.
Yeah, with the ventilation. Tree canopies, obviously, we want trees all over this place. And then, what are they doing, the same NYCHA questions, what are they doing to mitigate pollution while construction is going on? So if I missed anything, I'm sorry, Mr. They have it here, Astro's Dog Run. The dog run, they said is gonna be closed, and we wanted them to at least have a temporary space, or we'll put it in one of these spaces, but they actually put Astro's dog run in this, document. And they actually said that Astro's dog run was not a public space, it was a private public space because they charge people to come in.
It is.
But then I emailed them today just to make sure. They said, no, anyone can come if they want to. They need a license.
For upkeep.
Yeah, so but they won't turn anyone away. But they used to have like a fee, but they don't have anymore. You just need to show the dog is licensed and, you know, everything. So we'll correct that and, you know, for this. It's a small little thing, but I know it's a big neighborhood, concern.
Is it too early to say we want a dog
No.
run in the deck over space?
I don't know if we want to, but I think we want to say that because they say that it's not, they don't have to address it the same as if it were a public space because they charge, which is incorrect. So we just want to correct that and say, yes, you have to treat it as a public space, a free public space and whatever that means, but it's more, we want to put language in to preserve it and to secure that they have a space. Yes, it might need to go away for a little bit while construction goes on, because,
It's not gonna be able to exist in its current location.
No, it's gonna, because that location will be something different. So it will be relocated. Hopefully we can, fit it in. So just so you guys know, and Katie brings up a good point and it just jogged my memory. Those green spaces are going to be unfortunately the last things that we see, because those are gonna be holding centers for the, construction. So last is the.
Be
green
careful with the
spaces.
private public space stuff. The private public space stuff, it is private land. So it's a private space that's open to the public.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's not, no, the language they have, it says, since it's not open to the general public and only accessible by paid membership pursuant to guidelines and CEQR, blah, 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 they are considered, quote, private open spaces and are excluded from this analysis. Marty, what I'm saying is, that's not actually correct.
That's wrong.
Right, so I just wanna make a note of it in when we talk about it, we might as well make a note of it, that just to correct that, and it is open for everyone. Chris, and then I think Candace.
Okay, so I'm really glad you brought up Transbay Transit Center. That cost was $2.2 billion for 1,400 square feet in length. And the Port Authority from 8th and 9th Avenue is 800 feet in length. If you include 9th and 10th Avenue, you get roughly 1,600 square feet of residual cap space for park use. So I just want to put that.
That'd be great, yeah.
So it would be just as large, and because it's been done, we would like it modeled.
I mean, I'll attach the picture too, just so they have a vision and be like, hey, listen, it's been done. Don't tell us
It's not a pipe dream. We want it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they use federal money. They use federal money to do this. And it opened up in 2018. So I'm really excited you brought that up because it's a central theme that was talked about at Hell's Kitchen South.
Okay.
Was adding more and more park space, not just the sliver of green. Two, Marty brought up air, and if they're using the general air quality of New York City, you know, that's as a means by which to address Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen at any given point in time in New York City has the worst air quality. So we would like, if they're going to continue diesel buses, as Brad has said, like it's essential that those diesel buses pay a larger toll, those corporations pay a larger toll to address the pollution that they're putting into the air of Hell's Kitchen. Two, it's really unfortunate. I went into a quick deep dive with electric battery and buses, and current electric buses, when they're at capacity, can only get a range of 140 miles. And I believe it's about 60% of the buses that go into the Port Authority have a range of about 100 miles. And so like, we're talking about an industry that doesn't exist. It will likely not exist because of the limits of lithium batteries and cobalt batteries. And if they use cobalt batteries, oh my God, we're gonna be breathing in a lot more pollution in Hell's Kitchen than we'd ever imagine. So we do need to talk about filtration of air as a high priority. They may be looking at this through the eyes of Robert Moses and saying, oh, there is no problem, but ultimately the high asthma rates of Hell's Kitchen is direct responsibility and has been caused by the Port Authority. as well as the Lincoln Tunnel. And this is something that the federal government, New Jersey and New York needs to address in their project.
And Chris, I think you bring up a good point, and when you talked about the buses and the range, because that has been pushed back, and we said we want all buses, and they said, well, you know, a lot of these buses don't have, they go long trips. You know, a lot of these, they go cross country, you know, some of them, they don't have the range. Well, eventually, they will have it in 5 years. have the
It's not
range.
in New Jersey, you get a different one.
So-
Exactly,
so-
or like charge us.
So the range time by 2040 is not going to be even double of 140 miles.
We don't know, I mean.
That's the projected.
But Chris, like Toyota just killed their entire electrical program, because they're gonna go hydrogen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we should put
these EV talks,
non-electrical, non-diesel.
all this stuff,
Yes.
it's.
Non-diesel.
They're really starting to go hydrogen and all this electrical thing, because we don't have the infrastructure
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
It's really changing.
So
And
we
when a
make a
company like
focus on
that
non-diesel.
Yeah, all right, so do we have is there anything else you want me to add in the list? Again, this is the same thing, if you think of it.
Personally, should say this is very disappointing. Lackluster, not thought out well with the community, I'm just, now, that's why I don't write the letter.
Would you like to write this?
I was asked to write a letter once, they told me to add some sentences.
They really.
All literally wrote me was to add some sentences. So that's not much wrong, but,
Are we okay on this? Again, everyone, please email me. I'm gonna frame this a little, like, Brad said, I think we're also gonna frame this a little, it's not gonna be like a laundry list like NYCHA, but I will, talk about the environmental impact to the community. I will talk about our wishes for future environmental considerations. And hopefully, I'm sure land use will edit that a bit, but they'll probably take our section and.
We have a lower lifespan in Hell's Kitchen than anywhere else in Manhattan. Because of these two facilities and this project, the cruise terminal, I'm talking about just Port Authority, Lincoln Hill, 39th Avenue Highway, 10th Avenue Highway, 8th
Go
Avenue.
ahead.
I'm not sure if anyone was paying attention to today's Port Authority Board of Directors election meeting. I happened to log on to listen to it. I think MCB4 saw our cooperation and involvement in their.
Yeah, this guy did too.
Yeah.
They kept saying, we had our,
I'm pretty sure we did not agree to that.
we just wanna push them to do something great,
No, we
and they can do it.
Lo, wasn't it under you? Didn't you set that task force up?
Yeah, I think Dolores said that was me.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
So who was it? Was Christine,
Christine,
Paul,
or,
Paul Devlin, wasn't he eventually on it?
no.
At the end, no?
Bert chaired the committee. Christine, I don't even remember who else was on, it was 5 people. That's all I remember.
Joe was on it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's what they're talking about. They're talking about that group that, Roberta.
Just clarify, are we passing a letter out of
No.
committee? You're simply memorializing what is.
This is the same thing, this is
To
gonna
go
go
to
to land use, it's gonna be a list, it's gonna be a little more than like, I'm gonna kind of frame it as a section, kind of like the budget statement, but this is our section of the document. Anyone else, or do we wanna stay longer? Matt, don't you want it?
Need another coffee.
Are we okay, guys? Guys, really, this was a huge, like, a lot of big topics, but I think we're gonna come out on a good side of them, so.
Very good.
But we'll only have like one thing next month, I promise.
Any new business?
You know, it's just.
Leslie, sorry, there's 2 people in the public speak.
I want to say one more thing about that document that really pisses me off
I'm
is that
sorry,
they only gave us 30 days.
We have someone from the public and then, new business. Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry, Janine, just bring that person.
Sure, there's
people-
Michael and Ryan.
I'm sorry,
Michael and Ryan. are-
Mike Noble?
No, Michael Harachi.
Oh, Michael Hart, okay. Oh, Ryan, hi, how are you?
Hello, good. How are you?
Good, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to overlook you. We've been here for a few hours, but take. the
No, yeah,
floor.
I've been here. I've been here the whole time. God, what a process.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I wanted to bring up Astros, but you brought it up, and I also wanted to let you know, or I guess find out about the process. But we're also willing to forego any of the requirements so that Astros can have a legacy in the new space, in that new park. It is actually right across the street from where Astros is now.
I have it, I'm writing it down. We are definitely, if you heard us talk about it, it's definitely part of our, list, and
Thank you.
narration that we want, because we know it's important to the community, and we've worked with you guys before when, I think when they wanted to close it, what we thought prematurely. And so, but we wanna definitely, save that space, or that space elsewhere.
Great, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you for coming and waiting.
Yeah, it's interesting, I'll give you that, so.
It is.
Thank you.
It's a big problem. Of course, Michael.
Yeah, so I just have a few points. I know that to the gentleman's comment in regards to the air quality, based on the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene report dating back to, I believe it was 2020, the community health profile has shown that our neighborhood actually has PM 2.5, some of the highest in all of the 5 boroughs. Additionally, going back to 2018, the USDA the Urban Forest of New York City report has shown also our district, out of all of the boroughs, has some of the least street tree density in the area. I was at the meeting in person. I did notice a few comments that the presenters made were it was a lot of exciting news, but I think that they compared the endeavors to LaGuardia and Moynihan, and I think that two of the biggest areas, as somebody who works at the airport, of failure at LaGuardia and Moynihan is the lack of public seating. And also the lack of sidewalk space. I see airport employees walking on the roadside trying to get to LaGuardia. It's insane that such a project can fail at micro-mobility, taking those measures into account. The one bike rack that they have in Terminal C at LaGuardia is full to capacity. I can't say enough about the lack of public seating at Moynihan, as beautiful as it is. Leslie, I totally agree with your point in terms of continuity. I think that those green spaces should be connected. We should advocate for more public green space, including on the roof. And I totally support the gentleman's comment in regards to housing. Let's make a large percentage of those housing supportive units. Thank you.
Michael, would you send a citation for the PM 25 data that you have, the health data?
Absolutely.
Send it to me or to Leslie?
He can send, I think he can send it to Jesse, the office.
Or Jesse's fine.
Yeah, we can get it from the office.
You
Thank
got
you,
it.
Michael. Thank you for staying on too. I don't want me. I guess that's it. We'll wrap it up, but I know there's new business.
I'm asking if you do have new business.
Does anyone want to bring up new business? I'll take a motion then.
Motion.
Thank you. Good job, guys.
Good night,
Excellent.
everybody.
Thank you, Marty. We'll talk. Thank you, Janine.